Dragon Ball Daily Gift Pack Chapter 141 to 160. 141. The decisive battle officially begins. Goodbye Zeg Gong. At this time, on the ring, it was the battle between the two teams of the 7th universe and the 11th universe. In Jillian's hand, he was holding a person, that person, officially the last remaining person in their 6th universe, hit. It's over. Khalifa didn't see anything else, but she saw the future of herself and the others about to be erased. Khalifa, if it wasn't for the 7th universe who kicked us down, I'm afraid we would have been wiped out next, you know. Gabe said coldly. Why? Khalifa was very puzzled. Oh, I still don't understand, it's so stupid. Gabe put his finger on the ring. Jiren had already threw a side hit who was beaten to death on his hand, and then he said, see, did you see, either the 7th universe kicked us down, or the 10th this gang kicked us down. Quote question mark question mark question mark. Khalifa still didn't understand, she was going to be kicked down anyway, why should she and others be grateful to these people in the 7th universe? Seeing this woman's face still confused, Gabe was so angry that he didn't know what to say, sighed, shook his head and sat in the auditorium. At this time, Kair, who was on the side, woke up from the coma, got up and glanced around, his eyes widened, and then he looked at the field, and when he saw that there was still their last hope in the 6th universe in the ring, he suddenly relaxed. Took a breath. Fortunately, Hit was not left behind, otherwise, our 6th universe would really be over. Kair patted his chest while sighing. Hearing this, Gabe snorted coldly. Khalifa's expression was shocked, as if she had thought of something, and then she looked at the ring and saw Suyi winking at Sun Wufan, who was beside her. The latter also understood quickly, and hurriedly brought Hit back on the ground, and then waited in the encirclement of the 7th universe. Seeing this, Khalifa still doesn't understand. If the 11th universe kicked them off, then no one would be left. Thinking of this, the woman's face flushed red with a swoosh, and she sat down silently with her head down. Huh. Gabe sneered and said nothing more. On the field, on the ring. The Saiyan of the 7th universe, you are very strong. However, this is not the time for our final battle. Jiren folded his arms and faced Suyi with a very cold and arrogant attitude. Suyi yawned. Jillian was not his opponent, and he had no interest. This level is just right for Sun Wukong and the others to practice. Brother Suyi. At this time, Sun Wukong, who had had enough waves on the side, returned to the small circle, first said hello to Suyi, and finally put his eyes on Jillian, who was on the side, with an excited expression on his face. The strong can often feel the power of the strong. Sun Wukong can see Jiren's extraordinary at a glance, and Jiren can naturally see how explosive power is contained in Sun Wukong's body. You are also very strong, but, you are not my opponent. Jiren glanced at Sun Wukong, and only halfway through his words, saw a dazzling blue light burst out from Sun Wukong. Drink. With the roar of Sun Wukong, this guy even rushed forward. Uncle Suyi, what should I do? After Sun Wufan settled Hit, he got up and came to Suyi and asked. Ignore them, just clean up the people around you. Suyi glanced at the battle of fate that these two guys were fighting, and laughed inwardly. This guy Jiren might be able to make Sun Wukong grow up faster. If he guessed correctly, the free-spirited extreme mind power that Sun Wukong in the middle and late stages of the original anime took control of should be in the 3rd stage. Speaking of this, it is true that people have to be amazed that Sun Wukong deserves to be called the Hanging King. It took Suyi a lot of time to perfectly control the Zizai Gong, and this guy just got into a fight, and the experience value of the Zizai Gong went up. People are more mad than people. However, in general, his golden finger is quite perverted, so Suyi didn't feel too much imbalance. Suyi turned into a Super Saiyan and began to clean the rest of the universe in the ring. After a while, in a burst of desperate wailing, he kicked the whole group off the ring. At the same time, there was also a large audience outside the venue, and all the people in the auditorium were also eliminated by the great priest. Soon there were only 3 universes left in the ring, the 7th universe, the 11th universe, and the only remaining lone wolf, Hit, from the 6th universe. Jiren and Sun Wukong fought back and forth, and Vegeta didn't know when to fight the future god of destruction. Immediately afterwards, Son Gohan, Piccolo, number 17, and Buu also fought with the rest of the 11th universe. Obviously, everyone in the 7th universe is obviously stronger than everyone in the 11th universe, and the winner will soon be decided. Dad, do you want to help you? After dealing with the remaining people in the 11th universe, Sun Wufan immediately shouted when he saw Sun Wukong, who was being beaten all the time. Sun Wukong, who was in a fierce battle with Jiren, heard what Sun Wufan said, and even if he heard it, there was no time to answer him. No, let them fight. Katakana middle dot 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 katakana middle dot. Suyi started walking around. Originally, he wanted to use the capsule to bring out something delicious, but after thinking about it, he still had to give King Quan a respect, so he quietly found a stone and sat down leisurely. At this time, Hit of Universe 6 finally woke up from the coma. Huh, are you awake? When Sun Wufan saw Hit wake up, there was no expression on this guy's face, and he stared straight at Jiren, who was fighting with Sun Wukong in the arena. He didn't know what it was like at the moment. For many years, he hadn't experienced such a powerless feeling. Moreover, he attacked Jiren with the assassination technique, which did not cause any harm to this guy, and was directly suppressed by the backhand. Seeing Hit was ignoring him, Son Gohan didn't feel anything, shook his head and smiled, then turned his head to look at the place where Sun Wukong and Jiren were fighting. The 2 strongest people are fighting, and the aftermath should not be too terrifying. I feel like Dad is no match for this guy. Son Gohan watched for a while, and found that Sun Wukong in the Super Saiyan Blue state was simply not enough for Jiren to fight. Don't panic, Wukong still has a stronger realm that he hasn't used yet. Suyi reminded on one side, and then turned his head to look in another direction. He didn't need to watch the duel between Jiren and Sun Wukong for the time being, so in fact his eyes were always on Vegeta and Toppo on the other side. He discovered that this fellow Vegeta really had a powerful state, and he released it first. Just like now, he didn't even warm up with Toppo, and use the first stage of the free extreme willpower, so he was very violent at the beginning, but lacked continuous output in the follow-up. As a result, he was slowly Toppo began to counter-press back. A few minutes ago, there were only 3 spectators left outside the stadium. The 7th universe, the 6th universe, and the 11th universe. The god of destruction and the angels of the 3 universes showed shocked expressions on their faces when they saw Vegeta, who had used the first stage of the ultimate inspiration skill. When did Zizai Ji Gong become so bad? Beerus, a powerful god of destruction who had never understood this domain, suddenly smiled bitterly. On the other hand, Weiss understood that it was probably because of Suyi. After a few minutes, they looked at each other and shook their heads again. Vegeta, you are about to lose. Not only Beerus, but also Shangpa and the god of destruction from Universe 11 all shook their heads at the same time, and this thought came to mind. 142. Wukong's second stage of the ultimate free will power. In the arena, just like Suyi and a few gods of destruction outside the arena, when Vegeta showed signs of weakness, Toppo's offensive became stronger and stronger. In the end, Toppo beat Vegeta in one go. Seeing this, Suyi pursed the corners of his mouth. Vegeta's shortcomings are obvious. You know, Vegeta defeated Toppo in the original anime. But now, he who has mastered Zizai Extreme Intention skill should be stronger. However, it just didn't beat Toppo, which is indeed a bit intriguing. This is why Suyi said before that mysterious Gohan's strength is only a little weaker than Vegeta. Uncle Vegeta. When Son Gohan saw Vegeta flying backwards, he exclaimed, and hurriedly flew over to catch him. However, an astonishing brilliance suddenly erupted in Vegeta's eyes in midair, and the momentum grew again in vain at this moment. Drink. Vegeta froze for a while, turned around and saw a 147-eyed Son Gohan, and said coldly, "Go back. Let's see how I clean up this beard. Being beaten out and letting a junior come to support you. What a shame. As arrogant as Vegeta, I can't afford to lose this person." Although, in the past, he was often so embarrassed. But, that was once. Not now. Seeing that Vegeta's momentum was even more fierce, Son Gohan, who rushed over to catch Vegeta, stopped, stood still, and slowly showed a smile on his face. Topo, which is another manifestation of the characteristics of the Saiyan race. The more Topo fought with Vegeta, the more passive he found himself. It's not just the suppression of strength, but Topo also finds that his every move, any small action, seems to have been known by Vegeta in advance, and it can't cause substantial damage to Vegeta. On the other hand, when Vegeta made a shot, he would basically not be empty-handed, and every blow caused Topo pain. Over time, when Topo felt that his physical condition was not very good, he was ready to stop dragging this guy with Vegeta, and began to explode his most powerful strength. He is the equivalent of a desperate fight. Anyway, either Vegeta fell off the ring, or he fell off the ring. Seeing this scene, Suyi on the side nodded secretly. At least this guy Vegeta is not stupid and knows how to use his strength. Here he knows that the outcome is completely divided. Then he put his eyes on Sun Wukong and Ji Lian again, and saw that Sun Wukong had entered the first stage of the ultimate inspiration technique, with silver-white fireworks rising all over his body. Of power. There was another guy who controlled Zizai Jigong, Shunpa on the sidelines, the god of destruction in Universe 11, and Beerus were all very shocked by this. How many monsters like this have come out of this guy in the 7th universe? The elephant in the 6th universe auditorium murmured in a low voice, with a wry smile on his face. First, Suyi's Zizai Jigong, then Vegeta, and now Sun Wukong, all of which show that these guys in the 7th universe seem to have regarded Zizai Jigong as the realm of the bad street. Huh. Jiren saw Sun Wukong's ultimate freedom, and his face showed a slightly shocked look. Compared with the calmness of Vegeta's ultimate power that he had inadvertently seen just now, Sun Wukong's ultimate freedom made him feel more calm. Really feel the pressure. Come on, let's fight the strongest battle. Sun Wukong jumped in place, but his mental state returned to good, hooked Jillian, and then made an attacking stance. Huh. Jiren sneered and pressed him directly. Bang bang bang. The battle between the two started again. This time the battle was very intense, causing explosions, and the floor of the surrounding arena was blown up by them, floating in the sky. So powerful. On one side, Piccolo and the others were stunned. This level of confrontation can really be said to be a once in a century. When Sun Wukong and Jiren were fighting, Vegeta had already ended the battle. At this time, he was holding the broken neck in one hand and left him in the ring just like that. In the 11th universe, there is only one person left, and that is Jiren, who is fighting against Sun Wukong. Jillian, come on. Outside the arena, Topper and the others in the audience of Universe 11, as well as the god of destruction in their universe, all looked at the ring with great concern, for fear that Jiren would not be Sun Wukong's opponent. But, even if Jiren defeated that Saiyan from Universe 7, wouldn't there still be several Saiyans? Even, there is one Saiyan who seems to be stronger than the one who fought against Jiren at this time. That guy. Just when everyone was looking forward to it, a voice sounded. Swish swish. Hearing this, everyone turned their attention to the person who was speaking. This guy was a small member of Universe 11, and his strength was not strong, but at this moment, everyone looked at him with angry eyes. Will you die if you don't speak? Everyone scolded them. Originally, they were expecting Jillian to explode and kick everyone off the ring, but now that this guy speaks, their hope is gone. The man smirked, shrank his neck, and sat down in the audience seat with his head down. At this time, in the field, on the ring, Sun Wukong, who entered the first stage of Zizai Ji Gong, exploded his fighting power and began to suppress Jiren in turn, and he couldn't beat him at all. Stable. Vic laughed on the side. He felt that the victory in this game was almost certain. Hearing Piccolo's words, Sun Gohan on the side shook his head dignifiedly and said, "Uncle Piccolo, don't look at Dad's pressure on that guy, but it didn't actually cause any substantial injuries." Hearing Sun Wufan's analysis, Su Yi, who was on the side, glanced at him and felt that this guy's eyesight was very good. That's right, although Sun Wukong seems to be suppressing Jiren, he did not cause substantial damage to this guy at all. He knew that in the original anime, Sun Wukong was regarded as the third stage of the ultimate freedom, and he couldn't defeat Jiren strongly. Now, with this simple master of freedom, how could it be possible to defeat this guy in the first stage? Oh, too weak Kakarot. Vegeta, who had already kicked Breakthrough off the ring, came over, folded his arms around his chest, and gasped for breath. At this time, he returned to normal, and now he was coldly watching Sun Wukong and Jillian fight. Hearing Vegeta's words, Su Yi shook his head and laughed. This guy is really the deadliest of invisible pretense. If Vegeta stepped forward to fight Jiren, I am afraid that within a few rounds, this guy would be defeated. However, it was naturally impossible for Su Yi to say such words that hurt Vegeta's self-esteem. He slowly got up from the ground and walked towards the field. Is Mr. Su Yi ready to take action? At this moment, seeing Su Yi leaving, Beerus and Weiss' eyes suddenly lit up in the audience seat of Universe 7 outside the arena. However, what made them lose was 2.4. Su Yi didn't take action, but began to point Sun Wukong. Slowly, following Su Yi's guidance, Sun Wukong became more and more handy in the first stage of using the free-spirited extreme inspiration technique. Drink. After fighting each other again, Sun Wukong roared angrily, raised his head and burst into imposing manner. The silver-white fireworks around his body were deeper than before, and his pupils gradually changed from black to faintly silver-white. The second stage of Sun Wukong's free-spirited willpower has already inspired success. Everyone present felt the powerful momentum of Sun Wukong, and they were all moved by it, especially Vegeta, who showed an extremely shocking expression on his face. He who mastered the first stage of the ultimate free will knows how powerful this realm is, and now that Sun Wukong has mastered the second stage of the ultimate free will, the overall strength may be able to throw him a lot. 143. The fusion of Monkey King and Vegeta, Super Blue Gogeta. Sun Wukong's combat power is soaring, his momentum is growing, and he can't be more powerful. Feeling this breath, Jiren's body was shaking. That's not fear, it's excitement. Yes, that's excitement. If the Sun Wukong of the first stage of the ultimate free will let Jiren look at him a little, then the second stage of the Sun Wukong completely gave Jiren the will to fight. The seventh universe really deserves to be called the strongest universe. Outside the arena, in the auditorium of Universe 11, everyone fell silent, and this was what everyone had in mind. This is not the strongest person. Time is already so terrifying. If the strongest person, how terrifying his strength should be. Everyone has to believe in Jiren. At this time, Topo suddenly made a heavy voice, stood up and clenched his fists and roared, "Jillian. We can definitely win this time. We can't give him much help, but we can cheer for him. Jillian, come on." Seeing Topo's appearance, the rest of the people stared at him and opened their mouths slightly, obviously a little surprised by what he did. "Why are you standing still? Let's cheer for Jiren with Topo." 11 quickly came to his senses and shouted, "Jillian. Come on." Seeing that the god of destruction in their own universe began to cheer for Jiren, the other contestants in the 11th universe were silent for a second or two, and then they also started to cheer for Jiren in the ring. "Come on, Jiren. With our hope, keep fighting. We must let our 11th universe exist forever." Beerus in the auditorium of Universe 7 and Champa in the auditorium of Universe 6 heard that the guy in the auditorium of Universe 11 had been making noise, and frowned, but didn't say anything, because at this moment, this kind of refueling is worthy of recognition. At this time, in the field, on the ring, Jiren, who seemed to be feeling it, tilted his head and glanced at the side of the Universe 11 auditorium, and then saw the people who were cheering for him. Although he couldn't hear their cheering voices in the ring, he could tell from the expressions and actions of each of them that these guys were cheering for him. In this regard, Jiren retracted his gaze and remained silent for a while. "Don't desertion during the battle. You bastard." At this time, Sun Wukong rushed up and punched Jiren in the face, directly blasting him dozens of meters away, and fell into the waste rock pile. When fighting, Sun Wukong still hates this kind of distraction, because it will make him fight very unhappy, and this feeling is very unpleasant. Cough cough. Jiren got up from the pile of waste stones, a trace of blood spilled from the corner of his mouth. After he reached out and wiped it, he coughed twice, took a deep breath, and finally smiled. "You can't beat me." 6 words were spat out of Jiren's mouth, and then the words fell, and his whole person disappeared in place. Call out. When the next second appeared, Jiren's fist had already appeared on Sun Wukong's face. Boom. "This punch is for you back." Jiren's cold voice came into Sun Wukong's ears, and he was blown away with a punch. Immediately afterwards, Jiren, who was fully on fire, dodged and reached behind Sun Wukong, who flew upside down, and bombarded him with his fists. This guy Kakarot. Vegeta, who had been watching the battle on the field, clenched her teeth, and her heart was burning with anger. Boom. Vegeta moved and charged towards the field. "Kakarot, if you can't do it, leave it to me." Vegeta roared, and then launched an attack on Jiren, who was attacking Sun Wukong. Ah da 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 da. His fist attack speed is very fast. Ordinary people can only see afterimages, and they can't see where his fist is at all. Jiren sneered when he saw Vegeta shot at him, then gave up the bombardment of Sun Wukong, turned around and punched Vegeta. With this punch, Vegeta was blown away, but he liberated Sun Wukong, and the Sun Wukong who stabilized his body gave a loud shout, and his aura became even more inflated, and then sent out a turtle sect at Jiren. Qigong Wave. Jiren fights Vegeta, and when he has time, he comes out and confronts Sun Wukong. There is no winner or loser in the battle between the two, and the two have exploded by themselves in the middle. Boom. The explosion sounded. Vegeta, let's fuse. The smoke filled the air, and the sound of Sun Wukong's roar sounded in the field, followed by Vegeta's cold voice. "Kakarot, don't think about it. Vegeta said that I will never do that again. Shameful move." Hearing Vegeta's flag, Suyi couldn't hold back, laughed, and didn't even have to think about it. This guy will definitely be in the True Fragrance series again, and he will definitely take the initiative to call Sun Wukong to merge. Sun Wukong can't do anything, and now the others who don't want to merge can only rush up to him and attack Jiren with both sides. However, Jiren's strength is simply terrifying. Sun Wukong in the second stage of Zizai Jigong, and Vegeta in the first stage of Zizai Jigong, the joint attack of the two can't make this guy take a half step back. On the contrary, Jiren alone suppressed it on the spot, and beat the two of them abruptly. What about Vegeta? Neither of our two individual combat capabilities are as strong as this guy, and we can't fight against this guy if we join forces, so there is only one choice, that is, let's fuse. Sun Wukong spoke up again. In fact, if Suyi made a shot, he could definitely defeat Jiren easily. But he didn't choose to let Suyi take action. The reason was naturally because he wanted to defeat Jiren with his own abilities. Although, merging into Gogeta can be regarded as getting help from others. But don't forget, there is his own experience in it, which is very helpful to his combat experience, and can greatly improve his combat effectiveness. Suyi understood this truth, so he didn't plan to take action from the beginning, and he also really wanted to see if Gogeta, a super soldier, could confront Jiren head-on. Who is the most powerful single soldier warrior in the original Dragon Ball anime? That must be the Fusion Warrior. Whether Vegeta is stronger than Gogeta is something that every Dragon Ball fan wants to explore, including Suyi, who are very curious whether Vegeta is stronger or Gogeta is stronger. Suyi's thoughts came to an end, because a blue dazzling light suddenly erupted in the field. Can Gogeta, a fusion warrior who has never failed, be able to fight against this guy Jiren? Suyi, I am looking forward to it. Moreover, this is not an ordinary fusion warrior Gogeta, but a super blue fusion warrior Gogeta. There is even a thought in the property, that is, how fierce will the battle between fusion warrior Gogeta and earring fusion warrior Vegeta be? The fusion of Dad and Uncle Vegeta has appeared. On one side, Sunwoo 350 fan saw the appearance of the acoustic guitar, his eyes suddenly lit up, and he exclaimed, "It should be stable." Piccolo and the others laughed lightly. At this time, everyone in the rest of the universe outside the field was moved by it, and the combat power after this fusion has soared. Grand Priest, why can this be merged? Gotenks also merged before, but the overall strength is not very scary, so the rest did not pay much attention. However, the powerful aura that the fusion warrior Gogeta burst out this time shocked everyone. The god of destruction of Universe 11 immediately got up from the audience and bowed respectfully to the great priest in the sky, and then asked aloud. Hearing the words of the god of destruction in Universe 11, the great priest's eyes flickered, he lowered his head to think for a while, and then turned his head to look at the location of King Quan. At this moment, King Quan had a smile on his face, and his two little hands kept slapping together. He looked very excited. Obviously, the appearance of the super soldier Gogeta made him very excited. The whole king did not refuse, so fusion warriors can exist. The great priest turned his head and said lightly. Hearing this, the god of destruction in Universe 11 changed his expression, sighed with a wry smile, and looked at the ring. Jiren was indeed strong, but the power of this fusion warrior was more deeply rooted in the hearts of the people. Will Jiren be able to defeat this fusion warrior? From the bottom of his heart, the god of destruction in Universe 11 didn't think Jiren could defeat this fusion warrior in Universe 7. 144. Super powerful super blue Gogeta, Jiren burst into clothes. I'm not Goku, I'm not Vegeta, I'm the one who is about to defeat you. The fusion warrior Gogeta, who has been in the game for thousands of years, spoke out. Huh. Jiren sneered, he doesn't care whether you are Goku or Vegeta, in short, he is not afraid of you at all. Come on, let me see how powerful you are as a fusion warrior. Jiren and Super Blue Gogeta rushed up at the same time, and the two fought, and there were bursts of explosions and roars all around. Drink. Drink. The two people collided with the strength of the flesh, without too many bells and whistles, which made people look very comfortable, because this is the collision of strength, and the senses are very strong. Too powerful. Son Gohan couldn't help sighing on the side. He felt that his current strength had reached a very powerful state, but after seeing the battle between the fusion warriors Gogeta and Jiren, he began to question himself. Is it really powerful? Indeed, the battle between fusion warriors Gogeta and Jiren was very terrifying. Not to mention Piccolo couldn't see the real fight between the two, it was Beerus and the others outside the arena, and the white light was always flashing in front of them, very confused. I can't see the live battle screen clearly. The battle continued in the arena. At this time, Suyi's figure, who was not noticed, slowly disappeared into the shadows, and then appeared outside the ring. He is not limited by the law, as long as he wants. He can even restore all the universes cleared by the Great Priest. Now, I suddenly recalled an idea that flashed when he saw this power conference when he was watching anime in his previous life. What if the gods of destruction of the 12 universes are fighting against each other? What kind of experience would this be like? Now, recalling this thought, the corner of his mouth twitched into a smile, and he was ready to implement the idea of this previous life. Let the 12 gods of destruction in the universe fight each other. Not only that, Jiren, Hit, Son Gohan, Son Goku, Vegeta, and even him, all end up fighting once. The thought came to an abrupt end here, and Suyi was very excited at the moment. Using the power of the universal law to hide his figure, he came to the side of the great priest. Since Suyi was using the power of the law of the universe, the great priest did not have the strength to see through Suyi himself, but felt that there was someone suddenly beside him. Is that Mr. Suyi? The grand priest glanced around him and found that King Quan on the seat on the high platform looked at him with a smile on his face. He already had a guess in his heart and asked in a low voice. It's me. Suyi responded. What's the matter with Mr. Suyi? The grand priest asked again. I have a great idea and I'm sure Ah Quan will be happier. Suyi smiled slightly. Oh, Mr. Suyi, please speak. The high priest's eyes lit up and asked hurriedly. The duel between the top powerhouses in the 12 universes has already made Ah Quan so happy. What if it was a duel between the gods of destruction in the 12 universes? Suyi smiled. What? When the great priest heard this, he was stunned. Immediately afterwards, he reacted quickly, turned his head and glanced at Quan Wang, who was applauding on the seat on the high platform, his face full of excitement, and suddenly fell silent. Soon, he frowned. This is indeed a great idea, but what if King Quan doesn't like it? No, Ah Quan will definitely like it. Because, the top players in the 12 universes, after a break, will participate in a match without any pressure. Suyi said. In his opinion, this proposal is very good. When people are stressed, they do become stronger. However, sometimes fighting at will may be more powerful. Then, I'll go and ask the king of Chenzhou. The great priest thought for a moment, then set off and flew towards King Quan on the high platform. All kings. The great priest came and shouted respectfully. What's the matter? The king looked at him suspiciously. The great priest came to King Quan's side, bowed down and whispered Suyi's proposal, and then said, What do you think of your thoughts? After listening to the proposal, King Quan blinked, and then the light in his eyes became more and more flickering, and the great priest who had been paying attention to King Quan had already understood. Excellent. The offer. King Quan's crisp voice sounded, applauding. I see. The great priest smiled slightly, bowed to King Quan, and returned to his position. The king thinks it's a great proposal. The voice of the great priest came, and Suyi, who was hiding, didn't have too many surprises. Since that's the case, I'll go back. Wait a minute. The great priest's eyes flashed and he stopped Suyi. Farewell. Suyi said goodbye without turning his head. He didn't know what the great priest was thinking. This guy definitely wanted to fight him. When he was still in the ancient times, he was harassed by this guy every so often, so he had to test Suyi's strength. However, at that time, where was Suyi his opponent? He could only keep pushing away until he finally couldn't push it away, and then he used a bit of the law of the universe, just to beat him, and then he got rid of it. The entanglement of the great priest. Now, after so many years, the strength of the great priest has become deeper and stronger, and when he sees Suyi again, his heart naturally rises to the idea of trying to compete with Suyi. This guy really doesn't give a chance. There was a wry smile on the face of the great priest. He still remembered that he was defeated by Suyi many years ago, and now he is so powerful that he is unimaginable. Naturally, he has the mind to fight again. However, if Suyi didn't give him a chance for a duel, the grand priest couldn't do anything either. With a sigh, he looked towards the field again. At this time, the super blue Gogeta in the ring had already beat Jiren so much that he couldn't lift his head. Diaresis, wait. Maybe I can pretend. The great priest looked at it, his eyes suddenly shining. Suyi doesn't give him a chance to fight, so he will find it by himself. Obviously, he pretended to be a contestant. Wouldn't he be able to fight Suyi again? Thinking of this, the light in the eyes of the great priest became brighter and brighter, and in the end, he made a complete decision. Tsuyi quietly returned to the ring and looked into the arena. The super blue Gogeta who had previously suppressed Jiren was gradually showing signs of fatigue. This guy Jiren didn't know the reason, and the offensive began to swell. For a time, the strength of super blue Gogeta was not able to fight against Jiren. In the end, after Jiren punched the super blue Gogeta, the battle ended in a short time. Tsuyi felt a little strange seeing this scene. According to Jouda's reasoning, Gogeta in super blue state should not be less powerful than Jiren. How? When Tsuyi saw Jiren showing off his chest and showing off his clothes, he was suddenly stunned. Dragon Ball fans all know that the follow-up plots of Dragon Ball Super are all in the state of bursting clothes is the strongest state. Jiren is like this, so is Sun Wukong. The final battle between the two is a wonderful one. At this time, it was obvious that Jiren had already reached this state, and it was not impossible to fly away the exhausted Super Blue Gogeta. Boom! When Tsuyi was thinking about it, a more powerful aura suddenly erupted from the position where the Super Blue Gogeta flew out. This breath made Tsuyi's face a little shocked. Could it be Super Blue Gogeta? Can you still become Gogeta of the ultimate inspiration skill? As soon as this thought came out, Tsuyi suddenly came to the spirit. If it is Wugita who is really free and extremely mindful, then the strength may not be simply that the Super Blue Wugita has twice the combat power. 145. The power of Zizai Jigong Wugita. Jiren is holding on. Wugita walked out of the waste rock pile, and his body was exuding silver-white fireworks. Looking closely, his pupils turned silver-white, and he looked extraordinary. Sure enough, this is Zizai Jigong Wugita. Tsuyi looked at it with a shocked expression on his face, and asked in his heart, System, what is the combat power of Zizai Jigong Wugita? DDD. The system's voice resounded in his mind. Host, Zizai Jigong Wugita's combat power is around 18.5 Beijing to 20 Beijing. My darling, as expected of one of the most powerful single warriors in the Dragon Ball originals. Tsuyi was indeed shocked. What is the concept of a combat power of 18.5 to 20 Beijing? Not only Beerus, but Wisna is no match for Gogeta. Moreover, the current Zizai Ultimate Intention Gong Wugita is not the complete Zizai Ultimate Intent Gong, but only the second stage of the control. What if this guy is in control of the third stage, and even the final stage of the ultimate freedom? So, how powerful should it be? Tsuyi was excited, indeed very excited. At present, the people who can become opponents with him are the Great Priest and the two guards around King Quan, but he will definitely not be able to beat them without using the power of the universal law. Therefore, people of these levels are definitely not a good opponent for him. But unfortunately, apart from these people, as far as he knows, no one else has the same fighting power as him. Now there is Gogeta of Zizai Jigong, which makes him see hope and thinks that this is a very strong opponent. 377. However, at this stage, the Gogeta is still too weak. It seems that it will be necessary to teach them the third and final stage of the ultimate freedom in private at that time. There is no reason why such a strong opponent Tsuyi should not be trained well. After all, this is also very helpful for his combat effectiveness. Zizai Jigong Gogeta walked out, and Jiren saw a shocked expression on his face. To be fair, it was the first time he had seen such a powerful man in a head-to-head battle. You are very strong, I am not an opponent. Jiren understood this very well, but he would not give up. He still has revenge to avenge, so he won't just admit defeat, and he won't just follow the 11th universe to perish. Drink. Jiren broke out again, and charged towards Gogeta, the ultimate power of freedom. Boom. Jiren was only rushing halfway, and Zizai Jigong Gogeta had already dodged and flew, and punched more than 100 punches in midair. Ah! The power of each punch is undoubtedly not as vast as a planet pressing on him, causing Jiren to suffer a lot. You are not my opponent, just admit defeat. If you go on like this, you will be disabled for life. Gogeta spoke up. Never admit defeat. Even if I die, I will not admit defeat. Jiren clenched his teeth, roared out, and threw a punch at Zizai Jigong Gogeta. Gogeta, the CGDI fighter, had no intention of evading, and took Jiren's punch directly. Your strength is too weak to even hurt me. Zizai Jigong Gogeta shook his head. Damn it, damn it, damn it. Jiren roared loudly, and punched the body of Zizai Jigong Gogeta with great force, with a very unwilling emotion. He is really unwilling. Obviously he is so powerful and has the power to fight against the gods of destruction in various universes, but he has nothing to do with this guy. It was as if he was facing the enemy of the year. He hates, he wants to shoot, but he doesn't have the strength to shoot. Ah! Jiren became crazy, raised his head and roared, and his momentum grew in vain at this moment. If he wanted to survive, he had to win this game, so he had to defeat everyone on the field. Seeing Jiren erupting again, Suyi sighed on the side. In the original anime, it was very difficult for him to fight Sun Wukong, who was in the third stage of Zizai Jigong, who was half-blood, although he was also in half-blood. However, now he is fighting a fusion warrior with at least 70% of his blood in a state of half-residual blood. Moreover, this fusion warrior still controls the realm of Zizai Jigong. This, what to contend with? Can't compete at all. Jiren was still struggling to support him, and Zizai Jigong Gogeta had no choice but to take a strong shot, knocking out the man who was carrying a lot of money, and then dropped him from the ring. Ended. This power meeting should end like this. Jiren fell on the auditorium of Universe 11, Topo was the first to run over to support him, and looked up at the sky. At this time, the Great Priest had activated his clearing ability, and the radiance shown on them, slowly disappeared in place. The 11th universe is eliminated and cleared. The voice of the Great Priest sounded in the field, causing Shangpa in the 6th universe auditorium to lower his head, and Beerus in the 7th universe auditorium also lowered his head. If you can see their fronts, you can definitely see the tears in the eyes of these two gods of destruction. Next, it's a winner. How could Hit of the 6th universe be the opponent of the 7th universe? Therefore, the 6th universe will definitely be eliminated. At this time, in the arena, Hit walked to the edge of the arena in silence, looked back at Suyi, and the moment he jumped off, the voice came, "Thank you." Their 6th universe survived for so long without being cleared, entirely because of Suyi. If it weren't for him, the 6th universe would have been kicked off the ring by the people of the 11th universe long ago, and it would have been cleared by the Great Priest long ago. As Hit jumped off the ring, the Great Priest in the sky also announced the elimination of the 6th universe, and then eliminated them as well. Elephant Paw. Before everyone in the 6th universe disappeared, Beerus from the 7th universe got up from his seat and shouted at the 6th universe. Goodbye. Shangpa smiled and waved at Beerus. Slowly, everyone in the 6th universe disappeared. This contest of power is won by the 7th universe. The voice of the Great Priest rang in the ears of everyone in the field. Now, I will summon the Super Dragon Ball to make a wish for the winner. The Great Priest raised his hands, and 7 Super Dragon Balls the size of the planet rose up. He didn't use the divine language to summon the dragon for the first time, but squinted his eyes and glanced at the 7 Super Dragon Balls before shouting out. Divine language, summon the dragon. The dragon, which is exactly the same as the dragon god Salama, was summoned by the Great Priest. The size of this body shocked everyone present. The dragon summoned by this Super Dragon Ball is too big. Krillin and the others were shocked. Now, please state your wishes. The Great Priest's eyes were placed on Suyi and others, and the voice of Mu Chunfeng sounded. Hearing the words of the Great Priest, everyone turned their attention to Suyi to see how he would choose. Facing the gazes of so many eyes, Suyi smiled and raised his head. Grand Priest, please restore all the universes that were cleared by this power conference. Huh. Hearing Suyi's words, Son Gohan and the others around him were stunned, and Beerus in the 7th universe audience also showed a surprised look on his face. Weiss and Vados, as well as all the angels of the universe, looked at each other with smiles on their faces. Are you sure about this wish? The Grand Priest asked with a smile. Okay. Su Yi nodded. Good. The Great Priest raised his head and used the divine language to make a wish. After a while, a bright golden light flashed, and the dragon summoned by Super Dragon Ball turned into 7 Dragon Balls and flew out. The Grand Priest glanced at the 7 Super Dragon Balls, and a slight sneer appeared on the corner of his mouth. At the same time, the remaining 11 universes that had been purged were slowly forming, and eventually all of them were resurrected on their respective planets. Everyone was shocked, and soon, they all understood, and one by one, they were grateful to the 7th universe. It's over, but I have other things to say. The power conference officially ended, and the voice of the Great Priest continued. After a 10-day rest, all the gods of destruction in the universe and all the top masters will come to the boundless world again for a friendship power conference. 146. Release Mission. Save the Dragon Ball GT world. The voice of the Great Priest rang in everyone's ears, but these people were the top people who participated in this power conference. The weaker people couldn't hear the words of the Great Priest at all. As soon as the news came out, everyone who heard it was moved, and a panic rose in their hearts. Could this be the end of the second power conference? Grand Priest, I have a question to ask. Beerus suddenly gave a respectful salute and said. You said. The Great Priest put his eyes on him and smiled. In this power conference, will the losers be eliminated? Beerus raised his body and asked solemnly. No. Call. Hearing the words of the Great Priest, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. No is good, so that everyone has no pressure to fight. But. The voice of the Great Priest rang again. Boom. Hearing this voice change, everyone who was just relieved became nervous again, and everyone's heart beat very fast. But the universe with the worst grades must meet a requirement of the universe with the best grades. No matter what the requirement, as long as it can be met, it must be met. The voice of the Great Priest continued to sound, once again letting everyone's hearts be relieved. Compared with being cleared, no one thinks this is such a big deal. Then here comes the question. The overall strength of the 7th universe, I am afraid it deserves the first place. Then, it must be maintained for a while so that it will not be defeated and become the last one. Apart from the idea of people in the 7th universe rising up, the people in other universes have the idea of rising up. Don't ask for the first, but not the last one. The second power conference will be held 10 days later, during which you can naturally relax first. In Su Yi's opinion, there is no suspense in the ending, but he really wants to realize the idea of his previous life. Back on Earth, Su Yi wasn't ready to go straight into a state of cultivation. There was some relaxation and some slack. It was tight before, but now he should relax completely. Originally, Su Yi wanted to teach Sun Wukong's follow-up Zizai Jigong, but the latter expressed that he wanted to practice hard and use his own ability to control the follow-up Zizi Jigong. Therefore, Su Yi was naturally speechless. On the first day of the 10-day vacation, Su Yi took the little girl to visit all the scenic spots in the whole earth. Naturally, he didn't think too much about his daughter's intimate behavior towards him. After returning to Exedu with the little girl the next day, Su Yi was still not ready to practice, and was going to take a look at the Dragon Ball GT world. Coincidentally, when he entered Dragon Ball GT, the sweet and beautiful voice of the system rang in his mind. Ding! Mission released now. Save the world of Dragon Ball GT. Hearing this, Su Yi was stunned. What is the situation? This Dragon Ball GT world still needs him to save. What do you mean? Su Yi glanced at the sudden task, his thoughts sank into the system, and then looked at the introduction of the task. Save the Dragon Ball GT world, because the host taught the protagonist of the Dragon Ball GT world to transform into Super Saiyan IV in advance, a butterfly effect was produced. Therefore, when fighting against evil dragons, each evil dragon mutated, and the combat power soared up, so you need the host to clean up the mess. Quote. The introduction of the task is so simple, but Su Yi, who wants to take a vacation, will inevitably feel a little bit fucked. Okay, I did bad things with good intentions, and Su Yi also expressed that he was helpless. There was no way, this must be helped. Therefore, Su Yi took the quest directly without asking about the reward for completing the quest. Ding! Congratulations to the host for successfully receiving the mission. The system beep sounds. Okay, I got it. Next, what do you say? Su Yi wanted to solve the problem as soon as possible. Fortunately, the time ratio of the Dragon Ball GT world was very slow for the main world, which would not make him feel that this holiday was too bad. Destroy all the evil dragons and restore the original plot. The system replied. Okay, then I want to ask, can my cosmic law power in the main time and space be used in this Dragon Ball GT world? Su Yi suddenly recalled his abilities, and asked with curiosity flashing in his eyes. No, you can think of this Dragon Ball GT world as a copy of the game's strategy. Moreover, this is the worldview of the fandom, not the worldview of the main time and space. Except for some gods that exist the same, the rest are similar to the King of All, God of Destruction, and Angel. None of the great priests exist in this world. Quote. The system explained it. Hearing these words, Su Yi's eyes narrowed. So, will this Dragon Ball GT world really follow the plot of the future Dragon Ball Doujin AF comics? Thinking of this, Su Yi rubbed his chin with his hand, pondered for a while, and suddenly laughed. This can barely be said to be good news. Now his second form of Super Saiyan God is a combination of the 5 Super Saiyans and the realm of God, plus the ultimate freedom. And then, maybe he can reach Super Saiyan 6, 7, 8. And more among the fans in this world. If it is also reintegrated, then he can enter the 3rd form, the 4th form, and even the 5th form of the Super Saiyan God. How powerful would he be back then? It is truly unimaginable. After sensing the chi of Sun Wukong and others, he found that on a small island not far from Guixian Island, it was not only the chi of Sun Wukong, but also a very evil aura. Strange, this doesn't feel like the original plot of Dragon Ball GT World. Su Yi thought for a while, and frowned. Logically speaking, most of the original Dragon Ball GT is in the city, but now it is on an island. System, which period is the current period? Or in which episode of the original Dragon Ball GT anime? While Su Yi teleported towards the small island, she inquired about the system in her heart. Hearing Su Yi's question, the system was silent for a while, and soon a slightly speechless voice sounded. Host, you don't need to ask so carefully, right? If you don't ask me carefully, how do I know which dragons I will fight in the future? Also, is the 4-star dragon a good dragon like the original? Su Yi asked again. Please rest assured, the host, the plot is not much different from the original, but the most evil 1-star dragon is stronger in combat. Katakana middle dot 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 0. The system replied. That's it. Su Yi nodded suddenly. At this time, he had already flown to the island where Sun Wukong was. After a little sense, he arrived at the specific location of Sun Wukong in an instant. Just when he arrived, Su Yi saw the scene where the 4-star dragon was killed by a secret 1-star dragon and fell to the ground. 4-star dragon. The Monkey King in the Super Saiyan 4 state is like the original. At this time, his eyes are blind and he can't see the surrounding situation. He only hears the cry of the 4-star dragon falling to the ground, and his voice to dissuade Sun Wukong, Monkey King, run quickly. The 1-star dragon has mutated and is very powerful. What? 1-star dragon? Sun Wukong sensed it, and sure enough, there was a very powerful and extremely evil chi not far from him. Hey, scum, you can't even beat a wounded monkey, 4-star dragon, you're so embarrassing. Da da da. The footsteps sounded, and Yi Xinglong walked out from a corner, sneering at the 4-star-long who fell to the ground and the blind Sun Wukong. Call out. Boom. As soon as Yi Xinglong finished speaking, he stretched out a finger and fired a shock cannon at Sun Wukong. Sun Wukong, be careful. The 4-star dragon on the ground roared, and then jumped up from the ground, blocking the deadly shock cannon of the next star with his body. 4-star dragon. Although Sun Wukong couldn't see it, the aura of the 4-star dragon gradually disappeared. It was not difficult for him to guess what happened. Tears flowed from his eyes, and he slowly squatted down and came to the 4-star dragon's side. Monkey King, I really want to have a showdown with you. The 4-star dragon raised his hand and said these words, and then his neck twisted, and his body turned into a ray of light and dissipated, and then a 4-planet dragon ball fell to the ground. 4-star dragon. Sun Wukong roared and got up from the ground. At this moment, tears flowed from both of his eyes. At this moment, his eyes were miraculously able to see. I'm going to kill you, Yi Xinglong. Boom. The momentum erupted in an all-round way, and Sun Wukong slammed into a star dragon. At this time, Su Yi on the top of a mountain squinted at the very calm 1-star dragon. Mutant 1-star dragon. Combat power 10 Beijing. Seeing this combat power, he couldn't help being a little surprised. You must know that the super 1-star dragon in the original book is only 46,000 trillion, which is the strength of 4.6 Beijing. And this is just a simple mutant 1-star dragon, and it has reached the combat power of 10 Beijing. If it becomes a super mutant 1-star dragon, how powerful should this guy be? Boom. While Su Yi was thinking about it, Sun Wukong, who was charging towards the mutant 1-star dragon, suddenly flew back upside down. Immediately afterwards, he reluctantly got up from the ground. Another burst of momentum towards the mutant 1-star dragon kills. 1-star dragon. 4-star dragon is your companion. Why did you kill him? Sun Wukong roared. Oh, let's not say that the 4-star dragon is a waste, and it is useless to live in the world, just say that he died to save you. The real culprit is not me. Ha ha ha. The mutant 1-star dragon laughed. 147. The power of the immortal body is fully reflected. As soon as the mutant 1-star dragon said this, Sun Wukong fell silent. Thinking about it carefully, if 4-star dragon hadn't blocked the shock cannon for him, I'm afraid he would have died. Therefore, it is not too much to say that Sun Wukong killed the 4-star dragon. Okay, I'll send you down to accompany that trash too. The mutant 1-star dragon twisted his neck, making a crisp, clicking sound, and then took a step. Before Sun Wukong could react, he had already been pinched by the mutant 1-star dragon and lifted up. Sun Wukong looked at this mutant 1-star dragon unwillingly, his face full of anger. Bang! 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 The mutant 1-star dragon saw Sun Wukong's angry expression, a cold smile evoked at the corner of his mouth, and then punched Sun Wukong's face with a punch, hitting his head with blood. Too weak, little monkey. Do you think you are very strong? No, I tell you, you are nothing but scum in my eyes. The mutant 1-star dragon tilted his head and glanced at the 4 planets on the ground, and then sucked in his mouth, and the 4 planets on the ground were directly sucked into his mouth by him. At the same time, a light flashed on his abdomen, and then he saw a roulette-like thing appear in his abdomen, with a total of 6 dragon balls forming a circle. It's a great feeling. The mutant 1-star dragon closed his eyes, shook his head in intoxication, opened his eyes after a while, glanced at the Monkey King in his hand, casually tossed it, and then a shock cannon shot from his fingertips came out. This shock cannon pointed directly at Sun Wukong, who was thrown out by him and flew in midair. Boom! The explosion sounded one after another, and the mutant 1-star dragon happily danced on the spot. Huh! A sneer sounded at the position where the bombing sound came. Huh! The mutant 1-star dragon, who was dancing happily, frowned, stopped dancing, and looked towards the location of the explosion just now. After a while, the smoke dissipated, revealing a tall figure. Who are you? The mutant one-star dragon frowned and asked in a cold voice as he looked at the man who was several dozen meters across from him. Su, Big Brother Su Yi. At this time, Sun Wukong, who was lying on the ground, raised his head and glanced. After seeing Su Yi's back, the whole person relaxed. After shouting, he tilted his head and fainted. Su Yi looked back at Wukong, who had returned to normal, shook his head and smiled, then turned around to look at the mutant one-star dragon, and said indifferently, "Give you a chance, hurry up to evolve, otherwise it will be too boring to fight." Tenjing's mutant one-star dragon is not too powerful for a person at the level of Sun Wukong, but for Su Yi, it is really not even an appetizer. You can easily kill him with just one finger. Oh, arrogant fellow. The mutant one-star dragon sneered. He didn't feel how strong this guy who suddenly appeared. He shook his body and said, "Anyway, I have nothing to do, so I'll play with you." Su Yi curled the corners of his mouth and transformed into the state of Super Saiyan 4. Oh, it turned out to be a dead monkey. Ha ha ha, it's useless even if you turn into a red monkey. The red monkey behind you is just waiting for your end. The mutant one-star dragon saw Su Yi transformed into a Super Saiyan 4, and a sarcastic voice came. In this regard, Su Yi smiled lightly. He turned into a Super Saiyan 4's combat power, but it was not as low as Sun Wukong. In this state, he also had a full combat power of 12.5 Jing, beating a mutant one-star dragon with a combat strength of 10 Jing, then isn't it as simple as drinking water? Drink. Su Yi's eyes became solemn, and the lion fought the rabbit with all his strength, but with all his strength, he would naturally have no fun in fighting. But he wasn't so inflated, and he still used the strongest combat power in this form to fight against the mutant one-star dragon. Because, if you are not sure, you will overturn the water. Then he really didn't even have time to regret it. When Su Yi's breath burst out, the pupils of the mutant star dragon shrank for a while, and suddenly an inexplicable sense of panic rose in his heart. Su Yi didn't know the mental activity under the mutant star dragon's heart, so he rushed towards this guy after a cold drink. Wait. The mutant one-star dragon only felt that the panic in his heart was getting stronger and stronger, and he noticed a very dangerous aura. He hurriedly reached out to stop Su Yi, and exclaimed, "Red monkey, you have something to say." Seeing the attitude of the mutant one-star dragon, several big black question marks appeared on Su Yi's forehead. Does this mutant one-star dragon still know how to admit it? Suddenly, Su Yi felt a burst of laughter in his heart. However, he wasn't going to stop like the mutant one-star dragon said, but he was a little faster and arrived in front of him in the blink of an eye, with red fireworks on his fist hitting the mutant one-star dragon. Boom! With one punch, the mutant one-star dragon flew upside down. In midair, a blood arrow spewed out of his mouth. Su Yi rushed over again and saw that the blood arrow turned out to be pitch black. Su Yeben didn't care, but unexpectedly, the mutant one-star dragon that was flying backwards suddenly stopped in midair, with a sarcastic smile on the corner of his mouth. Huh. Su Yi saw the sarcastic smile on the corner of the mutant star dragon's mouth, and suddenly felt that something was wrong. However, he didn't think much about it. In his opinion, no matter how insidious tricks were, it was not as powerful as his absolutely invincible strength. No matter how tricky you are, I will punch through it. In short, it is so rough and simple. Thinking about it, Su Yi sneered, tilted his head to avoid the blood arrow spit out from the mutant one-star dragon's mouth, and just stretched out his hand to launch an energy cannon to kill this guy. Unexpectedly, a whirring sound came from the back of his head, and a frightening sense of crisis came, which made him turn around and look. Laugh. It was the blood arrow that he thought he had avoided that directly attached to his eyes, and finally melted deeply and completely entered his eyes. Ah! Due to his own carelessness, he was hit, and the pain in his eyes came, causing Su Yi to scream in pain. Ha ha ha, your strength has indeed brought me a very strong pressure, but you dead monkeys are really insane. This kind of trick will catch you. It's too weak. Seeing Su Yi screaming in pain, the mutant one-star dragon, who had completely stabilized his figure, folded his arms on the ground and laughed coldly. Hearing the arrogant voice of the mutant one-star dragon, Suyi frowned. He tried to open his eyes, but found that the pain was getting stronger, which shocked him. System, what's going on? Isn't my eye an injury? Why didn't my immortal body successfully prevent this kind of thing from happening? While Suyi was furious, he also felt very strange. From his point of view, as long as any part of the human body is injured, it will inevitably recover quickly. However, several seconds, or even more than 10 seconds, had passed now, and his eyes were still in constant pain, and they were even completely white, and he could not see the surrounding environment at all. Host, the immortal body is indeed powerful. In the face of the enemy's direct attack, you can choose to ignore it. However, this kind of trick is not the enemy's direct attack, but a penetrating ability that puts your eyes on the ground. Infection from the inside out. Quote. The system's voice sounded in Suyi's mind, causing him to frown again. 3.3 So, his immortality is not actually invincible. Master, you can think so, there is no absolutely invincible technique. The system continues. Okay. Suyi slowly calmed down. In general, this is the first time he has suffered a loss since his debut. However, it was an invaluable experience that gave him increased battle experience. Be careful, this is the absolute first thing to do. The pain quickly dissipated, and the coolness in his eyes made him feel comfortable, and even almost made him cry out. What's the matter? Su Yeqiang suppressed the refreshing feeling in his heart and asked. The immortal body is automatically perfecting its loopholes. The attack you suffered this time has been firmly remembered by it, and it is absolutely impossible to make the same situation next time. There was a hint of surprise in the system's voice, and it was obviously also very shocked. Hearing these words, Suyi's expression burst for a while. His undead body is simply a bug-level exercise, too powerful. 148. Chase and kill all the way, the mutant one-star dragon has evolved. Suyi's communication with the system seemed to last for a while, but in fact it only lasted a second or two. At this time, his eyes had completely recovered, and he could see the scene dozens of meters in front of him. However, if I really had to look a little further, my eyes would still have a slight tingling sensation. In a short time, the distance of tens of meters is not too bad, so Suyi directly charged towards the mutant one-star dragon, directly relying on the induction. Just a blind man, how powerful can he be? The mutant star dragon sneered, raised his hand, and a shock wave shot out from his palm. Feeling that Suyi was blind at the moment, he flew up and flew towards Suyi's right side. This guy is very smart and understands that Suyi's strength is much stronger than him, so he is ready to attack with his inconvenient shortcomings at the moment. But, is Suyi really blind? Not at all. Suyi is very clear about the mutated star dragon's careful thoughts, and he just smiled coldly and let him attack, as if he didn't notice the attack from his close body at all. 1 second. 2 seconds. 3 seconds passed quickly. The mutant one-star dragon was still very cautious, and it took Suyi a few dozen meters in the air for 3 seconds before choosing to start. For this, Suyi secretly nodded and praised this guy for his intelligence and caution. However, it is useless to be cautious, because Suyi is fishing. In fact, Suyi's full firepower can directly suppress this guy. However, the mutant one-star dragon is smart, and he is also trying to make fun of him. Boom. Soon, the mutant one-star dragon was killed, and at the same time he raised his hand and aimed at Suyi with an attack. Suyi also turned his head at the same time. The cold smile on the corner of his mouth made mutated one-star dragon startled for a while, and then a look of horror appeared on his face. You. Opening his mouth, the mutant one-star dragon just said a word, and then a flash of sword energy instantly reached his face. Laugh. The lightsaber turned into the six-veined divine sword directly chopped off his head. Dong dong dong. The head of the mutant one-star dragon rolled some distance on the ground, but his body did not die immediately, but wanted to fly up and escape. However, how could Suyi let him escape? He threw the lightsaber in his hand and directly pierced the body of the mutant one-star dragon that flew into the sky. Thump! The body fell to the ground, causing a burst of dust. Suyi glanced at it and didn't notice the aura of the mutant star dragon anymore. He shook his head and chuckled lightly. Then he came to Sun Wukong, who had fainted before, and squatted down and fed him a super fairy bean. System, the mission this time has been completed, how about it? Let me see what the reward is. After feeding Sun Wukong a super fairy bean, Suyi got up and wanted to see what the reward for his mission this time was. As a result, after waiting for a few seconds, there was no system prompt sound in his mind, which made him stunned, and then his mind entered the system task space. Unfinished. Suyi saw that there were 3 black words unfinished after the task displayed in the system space, which made his eyes widen, and his mind hurriedly retreated from the system task space, and then headed towards the place where the mutated one-star dragon's body was located. Look in the direction. Ha-tilde. A gust of wind blew, and there was still the corpse of the mutant one-star dragon. Not to mention the corpse, even this guy's head is gone. There was a wry smile on Suyi's face. This was really a painful lesson. The reward he received was temporarily flying away, which really made him very uncomfortable. Brother Suyi. At this time, Sun Wukong, who had eaten the super fairy bean, woke up, saw Suyi, hurried over and asked, "Where's the one-star dragon?" Escape. Suyi sighed, but did not throw the blame. Let this guy escape, that is escape. Escape. Sun Wukong sucked in a breath of cold air and panicked. It's over, this guy has infinite growth potential. If he really escapes, I'm afraid he will have grown to a very terrifying realm next time he appears. Hearing Sun Wukong's worried words, Suyi laughed, waved his hands and said without caring, "Don't worry, with me here, this guy can't make any big waves." A mutated one-star dragon with 10 capitals is only a 10-capital mutated one-star dragon. Even if the evolution is successful for him, could it be possible to increase the combat power by 10 times to reach the combat power of 100 capitals? He didn't believe it at all. Seeing that Suyi was so confident, Sun Wukong also let go of his heart. He looked back at the position where the 4-star dragon fell to the ground before, and sighed heavily. "Wukong, I'm leaving first. Don't worry, Yi Xinglong can't escape." Suyi smiled lightly, pointed his index finger to the middle of his eyebrows, and used teleportation to leave the place. He is going to hunt down Yi Xinglong. Although this guy's aura is very well hidden, but he has practiced meditation, and his perception is amazing. Under careful sensing, he can still trace a small trace of the evil aura belonging to Yi Xinglong. Soon, it didn't take long for Suyi to follow the evil aura of the mutant one-star dragon he sensed all the way to an uninhabited island. Suyi suddenly felt a powerful evil aura burst out, which made his eyes condense, and a sense of horror rose inexplicably in his heart. Wait a minute, in the original book, the one-star dragon absorbed 6 Dragon Balls and increased its combat power tenfold compared to the previous one. Now, Suyi's heart skipped a beat, suddenly recalling the original plot of Dragon Ball GT, his face suddenly changed. I have to kill this guy quickly and stop him from evolving into a super mutant one-star dragon. Suyi gritted his teeth, and only then did he realize the importance and danger of the matter. Call out. Suyi flew to the top of a big mountain, and then stepped on his feet heavily, only to see the big mountain shattered slowly from the top, and then exploded with a bang. Get me out. Suyi let out a loud shout and directly transformed into the second form of the Super Saiyan God. His strength was still the same as the previous 40, and there was no change. This strength is indeed very terrifying, let alone a master at the level of Weiss. Even if there are a few more, he is not cowardly, and can easily crush it with one hand. However, if the strength of the super mutant one-star dragon is really 10 times higher than that of the mutant one-star dragon as in the original book, then he will be the one to be crushed. Boom. The roar of the explosion resounded throughout the island, a black light descended from the sky, and in a deep pit, an evil dragon rose into the sky. It was the mutant one-star dragon. Dead Monkey 943, chasing him all the way, I really don't know whether to live or die. The mutant one-star dragon rushed into the sky, and bright black and dazzling fireworks rose all over the body, and the momentum was even more terrifying. System, how strong is this guy? Suyi stared at the one-star dragon, narrowed his eyes, and asked a question in his heart. DDD. The voice of the system rang in Suyi's mind. The combat power of the mutant one-star dragon has been detected, 50 Beijing. Note, at present, there is still 50% progress before he transforms into a super mutant one-star dragon. Closing parenthesis quote. 50 Beijing's combat power, and this has not completely become a super mutant one-star dragon. Hearing the beep of the system, Suyi sucked in a breath of cold air. 10 less than this one-star dragon. On the surface, it does appear to be an insurmountable chasm. However, don't forget that Suyi has an immortal body. In a sense, he can fight a protracted war of attrition. Therefore, as long as you kill this guy quickly, you can successfully prevent the subsequent transformation of the mutant one-star dragon. However, it is indeed very difficult and challenging to have a combat power of 40 Beijing against a strong enemy with a combat power of 50 Beijing. This is another lesson. In the future, if you can cut through the mess with a quick knife, you must not procrastinate. Moreover, you must be sure whether you are dead before you can relax your vigilance. Suyi taught himself a lesson in his heart, and after bursting, he killed the mutant one-star dragon in midair. 149. 18 Palms of Subduing Dragons. King Long has regrets. Suyi quickly started a battle with the mutant one-star dragon. At first, he couldn't see anything. As the two fought, the difference in the combat power of 10 Beijing gradually became apparent. Although Suyi has an immortal body and is not afraid of injuries at all, he can't stand the powerful explosive power of the mutant one-star dragon. The injury on his body healed in 1 second, but the next second, there were more than a dozen injuries. After a few minutes of repeated battles, Suyi knew that it was not good for him to use the wear and tear to win the protracted battle. If that's the case, then let's be tough to the end. Suyi burst out with a terrifying breath, roared, holding the lightsaber formed from the six-veined divine sword in his hand, killing the mutant one-star dragon. Ping pong pong. The six-veined divine sword stabbed the mutant one-star dragon, arousing firelights and making a sound like iron. My dear, the physical power of this evil dragon is so terrifying. Suyi was stunned inwardly. You must know that the lightsaber condensed with his 6-vein Excalibur is a super expert who can easily kill 30 Jing and 40 Jing. And this evil dragon, with the strength of his flesh, directly competed with his lightsaber, which was simply unimaginably terrifying. Monkey, I'll give you a chance to transform into a red monkey. When Suyi was secretly shocked, the mutant one-star dragon sneered. He thought that the red monkey, that is, the Super Saiyan 4, was stronger than the Super Saiyan 2 form at the moment. In fact, he didn't realize that his own strength had increased a lot in vain. Hearing the words of the mutant one-star dragon, Suyi's face sank, and he felt that the evil dragon was mocking him, and that his strength was not worth mentioning. Huh. Suyi sneered and threw a punch. This was just a punch to attract attention. In fact, it was to cover him and fly back dozens of meters. Since you don't turn into a red monkey, then I'll kill you. The mutant one-star dragon laughed and flew towards Suyi quickly. First kill you, and then kill Sun Wukong. You dead monkeys have too much potential, you need to clean them up as soon as possible. Seeing that the mutant one-star dragon was able to rush over, Suyi showed a cold smile on his face, raised an attacking gesture, and slammed it out at him. The first style of the 18 palms of subduing the dragon has regrets. Along with Suyi's roar, a 9-clawed golden dragon flew out from the center of his palm. Yan. The sound of the dragon's roar resounded throughout the entire island, and with this sound alone, the mutant one-star dragon that rushed over almost fell into the sky. The mutant one-star dragon is also a dragon, but this 9-clawed golden dragon is one of the top dragons in China, and its dragon might easily suppress other dragons. Boom! The 9-clawed golden dragon rushed over and hit the mutant one-star dragon, causing bursts of explosions. Suyi didn't stop attacking and quickly played the second style of the 18 palms of subduing the dragon, the flying dragon in the sky, the third style seeing the dragon in the field, the fourth style. After a set of combo moves, he literally suppressed this mutant one-star dragon with a combat power of 50 Jing with a combat power of 40 Jing. The power of the 18 dragon subduing palms is indeed powerful, and it has a very strong repressive effect on this kind of dragon creature. Suyi was very satisfied with the power created by his 18 dragon subduing palms, and nodded secretly with a smile on his face. Soon, the smoke and dust from the explosion area dissipated, revealing the body of the mutant one-star dragon lying on the ground. Suyi didn't hear the system's beep saying that his mission was complete, so he didn't rush forward, but instead gathered chi and gave this guy a super large energy cannon. Boom! A very huge energy cannon was thrown from Suyi's hand, and the speed was very fast. In the blink of an eye, it had already rushed towards the mutant one-star dragon lying on the ground. The roar of explosions sounded one after another, with great momentum. When Suyi looked at it, there was a burst of flying sand and stone, which made his eyes narrow. Mission, still no prompt to complete. This guy's life is too hard. Suyi still didn't step forward. He folded his arms and stared at the front. Soon the smoke, dust, stone and soil in front of him dissipated, and 7 figures appeared. He stared at the 7 figures, facing the 7 dragons. From the first to the 7th from the left, the evil aura on each evil dragon is very strong. The 4-star dragon appears to have been infected. Suyi glanced at the 4-star dragon that was almost in the middle, and checked his introduction with the system. The signs were all called the evil 4-star dragon. Therefore, if he killed this evil dragon, there would be no embarrassment at all. Dead monkey, we are 7 evil dragons, it's better to be sensible and get out, otherwise 1 dragon and 1 energy ball will come down, and you won't be able to eat and walk away. The mutant 1-star dragon on the far left roared angrily. At this time, his combat power was not as terrifying as 50 Jing, but just the same as the previous 10 Jing. That's right, monkey, our 7 brothers are of one mind. We can merge and transform into a super evil dragon. You can't even run away. Now, I'll give you a chance to run. Another evil dragon opened his mouth. Suyi glanced at him, and there was a cold smile on the corner of his mouth. With the previous lessons, it is naturally impossible for Suyi to let go of these evil dragons. Thunder attacked, but in the blink of an eye, all the 7 evil dragons were beheaded by Suyi. Ding! Congratulations to the host for completing the task of saving the world of Dragon Ball GT. Ding! Quest rewards are being dispatched to the host. Ding! Congratulations, host, a quest package has been delivered to your system package space, please remember to check it. ... A series of system prompts sounded in Suyi's mind. He didn't immediately check what was in the quest package this time. Instead, he came to the 7 dragon balls that he slaughtered and turned into 7 dragon balls, and slowly crouched down. Down. According to what he meant, he was going to call Shenlong directly to restore the disaster loss this time, but after thinking about it, he was still going to hand it over to Sun Wukong and the others. Picking up the 7 dragon balls, since Sun Wukong couldn't detect his breath, Suyi sensed his position slightly and teleported directly to him. On Guixian Island, Monkey King, Vegeta, Sun Gohan, Piccolo. A large group of people gathered around, all waiting for the end of the matter. Diaresis, I can't sense Big Brother Suyi's breath at all. Hey, I don't know what happened. Sun Wukong sighed. The incident has been resolved. Suddenly, a voice accompanied a figure in the Guixian house. Brother Suyi. Hearing his voice, Sun Wukong looked back, a smile suddenly appeared on his face. Suyi, who was familiar with the others and considered strangers to Sun Wukong and the others, smiled, then took out the 7 Dragon Balls and gave them to Sun Wukong, and said, "Dragon Balls for you." Sun Wukong took the Dragon Ball in his arms, glanced at the 4 planets, and sighed, "Make a wish to restore the hard loss of this disaster, Qian Zhao. As for the 4 planets, I will find them back after a year. In the future, try to be as good as possible. If you don't summon a dragon, you can't summon a dragon." Suyi smiled slightly, knowing that the plot of Dragon Ball GT is almost over. Next, is the Doujin Dragon Ball AF. Dragon Ball AF is only in the form of comics, and it cannot be made into the form of anime. However, Suyi, who is a fan of Dragon Ball, still knows the general trend of this comic, so he will not panic in the future. Not to mention, when the AF story unfolds, it will be 5 years later, when the 3rd son of Sun Wukong, Jai Ko in the Western Realm King God invaded the Earth, then his strength will be more than that, just up a notch. Therefore, Suyi was not flustered. After that, Suyi stayed in Dragon Ball GT for a while, and then returned to the main space-time world. The 2nd day of the main time and space world was only a few minutes later. Use the time room to continue your practice, and soon, it will come to the 8th day of the 10-day period. 150. At the beginning of the 2nd Power Conference, the pressure brought by the 7th universe. On the 8th day of the 10-day period, Suyi walked out of the training room on this day. It is a pity that the time flow rate of 100 times is currently the limit. Otherwise, 200 times, 300 times, wouldn't that be nice? That's it, 100 times the flow of time in a few days. Suyi's combat power when he transformed into the 2nd form of the Super Saiyan God also increased from 40 Beijing to 45 Beijing. Don't think that the combat power of 5 Beijing has skyrocketed in a few days. If it is a few more days, wouldn't it have skyrocketed the combat power of 5 Beijing? First, this is the reason for 100 times the time flow rate. Second, in the Dragon Ball GT world before, Suyi gained some insights into the combat power of the mutant star dragon, which led to his combat power increasing so quickly. Oh, I forgot, that quest pack in the world of Dragon Ball GT. Suyi patted his forehead, then sank into the system package space. Soon, an ordinary variegated gift bag with a bad appearance appeared in his eyes. Task package, converted to the level of the daily package. The package is greater than or equal to the diamond level. All this depends on the host's luck. Taking a look at the introduction of this quest package, Suyi's eyes suddenly lit up. To be honest, this quest package is really good. The minimum is a diamond level package, and if you are lucky, you may reach a master or a grandmaster or even a king level package. This alone made Suyi feel that he should give this gift package a compliment. Yes, this package is very nice. But I'm not going to open this package at 170 now, because I don't think today will be a very lucky day. Suyi smiled, put the gift bag in the system package space, and said, "System, you send me today's daily gift bag, I'll test my luck first." "Okay, please wait a moment, host." The system replied, and after a few seconds, it continued, "Ding. The gift package has been delivered today. Please pay attention to check it, host." "Oh." Suyi responded with a deep thought, and the corners of his mouth twitched. Bronze level gift bag, he recalled. How many years ago was the last time he received a bronze level gift bag? 5 years, 7 years, 10 years. In short, after so many years, it was the first time that he once again received a bronze level daily package. So, in fact, in this case, I really don't know whether to say he is lucky or very bad. If I remember correctly, the bronze level gift bag can be stored indefinitely. If that's the case, why don't I just put this gift bag in the space and not open it in a hurry? Suyi asked. "Yes, host." The system responded. "Okay, I see." Suyi didn't care about this bronze level gift bag anymore. All in all, the gift bag he got from the quest in Dragon Ball GT World made him not a big loss recently. At least, it has to be a diamond gift package, doesn't it? There are still 2 days and 10 days to come. At that time, in the second power conference, he will completely reveal all his combat power. He stayed in the ancient times for so many years, how could he have no understanding of the high priest's careful thinking? He knew that this guy would disguise himself as one of the contestants to fight against him, there was no doubt about that. He came to his courtyard, stood for a while, and then the little girl ran over and jumped into his arms. The 2 double ponytails kept rubbing against the tip of his nose, and the fragrance of the hair and body made Suyi smell it, and it smelled good. "Dad, you're finally out, I miss you so much." The little girl rubbed Suyi's body, and she was already a young adult, which would inevitably make Suyi a little embarrassed as a father. After coughing twice, Suyi hugged the girl down, rubbed her head, and asked, "The second power conference in 2 days, do you want to come with me?" "Of course, Dad will take it wherever he finds it, and he will always follow you anyway." The little girl came up again, put her arms around her father's arms, and rubbed against him again. "You girl." Suyi smiled dotingly, then took her by the hand to the inner room. Today, Akatsuki didn't go to work in the company, so she had a hearty lunch during her break. "Oh right, Xiao, do you have time recently?" At the dinner table, Suyi suddenly remembered something and asked. What's wrong?" Akatsuki Mato stopped his chopsticks and looked at Suyi. "In a few days, our family will go out to travel again. This time, it is not our 7th universe, but other universes." Suyi smiled and said, "This power conference is over, CBFE, he must relax himself, and the best way must be to travel with the person he loves the most." Their family basically traveled to all the places in the 7th universe that should be visited, and if they wanted to travel again, they would definitely go to other universes. Just taking advantage of this power conference, he can follow the 6th universe, the 11th universe, or the 1st universe. Anyway, there are so many universes, he doesn't believe it, there is no fun. Hearing Suyi's words, Mato Akatsuki's eyes lit up, nodded hastily, and said, "Where is my husband going, where am I going?" "Haha, good, since that's the case, don't be busy for a while. Join me in a conference in 2 days, and we'll set off after the conference is over." Suyi laughed. ... The 2 days passed by very quickly. The infusion did not rest in the past 2 days, but brought Bulma and the others to Guixian Island to have fun with everyone. As for Sun Wukong and the others, Suyi has not seen their actions since he came to Guixian Island for 2 days. On this day, Whis and Beerus arrive. At the same time, Sun Wukong and others also stopped their cultivation and came to Turtle Immortal Island. A group of people met, and then went to the boundless world together, and came to this familiar place 10 days ago, and many people had sighs on their faces. The people of the 7th universe appeared, and other universes cast their grateful eyes. If they hadn't made a wish to restore all the disappeared universes, they would definitely not appear in everyone's sight again. Humph. Humph. Brothers Beerus and Champa glanced at each other, both of them snorted very proudly, and then turned their heads in other directions. At this, members of both universes laughed. Suyi glanced at the people present, most of them looked at them not only with gratitude, but also with fear. Because the overall strength of the 7th universe is too strong, it is not like the combat power of the same class as them. This is indeed the case. In the duel at the top levels of each universe, no matter who it is, they have to admit that the gap with the people of the 7th universe is indeed a bit big. Soon, King Quan came, and so did the Great Priest. Seeing the Great Priest, the latter also glanced at Suyi, with faint smiles on their faces, and each nodded as a greeting. "Everyone, the second power conference of the 12 universes will begin soon. Next, I will build the ring, everyone, please be ready to enter." The High Priest's voice like a spring breeze rang in the ears of everyone present, and then he waved his right hand, and a ring bigger than before rose in the air. The second power conference officially begins. As the voice of the Great Priest fell, the 12 gods of destruction from the universe and the top masters in the universe all entered, each standing vigilantly watching their surroundings. 151. Super Saiyan 1 actually increased 60 times. It has to be said that the pressure brought by the 7th universe is very strong. In the entire arena, basically no universe will set their sights on them first, because if the challenge fails, they will be the first universe to be eliminated. Of course, the first universe to be eliminated is naturally the last one, so naturally there will be no pressure on these people in the future. Therefore, it is basically impossible for people who do not commit suicide to take the initiative to provoke the majesty of the 7th universe. Just like that, the atmosphere was deadlocked for about a few minutes, and no one moved. In the end, it was the destruction god Elephant Paw of the 6th universe that flew to the 7th universe, and then hooked his finger at Beerus, and then pointed his thumb to the side, which obviously means that we are going there, go for a fight. Beerus is the kind of person who is easy to be provoked by others, so he walked out immediately, ran aside and started a fight with this guy. With the beginning of the Beerus brothers, some people started to invite battles. In short, each universe has a bottom line, so that their universe will not be eliminated in an instant. To be honest, it doesn't matter if it is the last one. It is the most embarrassing and humiliating thing if whoever becomes the first to be eliminated or the first to be eliminated from the universe. Suyi found a stone pile and sat down, then looked around, thinking about when the great priest would come to fight him. But after waiting for a while, no one came to him, which made him very strange. After waiting for a while, Suyi got up from the pile of stones and ran to the field. The people in the field saw him coming and gave way. Some of the people who were fighting also stopped and moved out of the way. As he walked, he looked at the sky from time to time. When he saw the great priest was always in the sky, he frowned and thought, this guy Karen will not be cowardly, right? But think about it carefully, the strength of the great priest is very powerful. How can he admit it like this, and it does not match his temperament? After staying in the ancient times for so long, Suyi knew that the great priest was very gentle on the surface and seemed to not care about anything. In fact, once he suffered a loss or lost somewhere, he was very strong, indomitable mentality. Therefore, this time, such a good opportunity to fight, he did not believe that the great priest would not come to fight him. The battle in the surrounding area started completely, and various explosions roared in his ears, which made him inadvertently glance at the past, and found that Sun Wukong was fighting Jiren. These two guys are the top masters in their respective universes, and the collision between the two leaves them empty, because the aftermath of their battle at this level is enough to cause a weaker person to suffer a devastating blow. No one dared to confront him. Suyi found another stone pile and sat down, then nodded secretly while watching the battle between Jiren and Sun Wukong. For 10 days, he guessed that these two guys didn't stop cultivating and kept moving forward. The difference in combat power between the two is not too big now, which shows how terrifying Sun Wukong's improvement is. After all, Jiren could be said to be able to unilaterally crush Sun Wukong before, but now the two of them are in a similar state. In Suyi's view, this kind of even-handed confrontation is the most attractive. Originally, for Suyi, this power meeting was very worth looking forward to, but as a result, the great priest did not come off to find him for a duel, which made him really boring, because the others were even the best. The god of destruction couldn't match him with 1 or 2 moves. Then, can you give me some pointers? At this time, a voice rang behind Suyi. Hearing this sentence, Suyi had a smile on his face, got up hastily, and then turned around to take a look. When he saw the person in front of him, who thought it was a great priest, a look of disappointment flashed on his face. The person in front of him is the Saiyan Gabe from the 6th universe. Mr. Saiyan from the 7th universe, my name is Gabe, although I am weak, but I want to become stronger, in order to protect the people I want to protect, so I beg you to help me. Is it okay? Gabe, the Saiyan in Universe 6, is very sincere, and his eyes are full of anticipation and anxiety. Seeing the sincere expression on Gabe's face, Suyi frowned, then pondered for a while, then nodded. in this case, you are now in your strongest state, let me see your strength. After all, they are people of the same family. Although they are not in the same universe, Suyi can give some pointers, and try to give some pointers. The main thing is that he is very boring now anyway. Thank you so much. Hearing that Suyi agreed, Gabe was all excited, and kept bowing to Suyi and thanking him for a while. Finally, Gabe raised his body to look directly at Suyi, roared and transformed into a Super Saiyan 1. Bland. Suyi just glanced at it and made a definition in his heart. Gabe's Super Saiyan 1 is nothing more than a normal Super Saiyan 1 first stage, nothing special. Drink. Katakana middle dot katakana middle dot katakana middle dot asking for flowers katakana middle dot. When Suyi thought that Gabe's transformation was bland and not outstanding, the guy roared again, his aura was much stronger than before. Huh. Feeling the breath on Gabe's body at this moment, Suyi's eyes widened. Good guy, before this kid was obviously in the first stage of an ordinary Super Saiyan 1, and it was amazing to let him see it again just now. Originally, Super Saiyan 1 only had a 50-fold increase, but after this kid burst his anger, it turned out to be a 60-fold increase. But don't underestimate it, this is only a 10-fold increase. But in fact, think about Suyi's Super Saiyan 1, which can only have a 50-fold increase, while this guy's Super Saiyan 1 has reached a 60-fold increase. What is the concept? Boundaries are pushed. That's right, this kid named Gabe from Universe 6 broke the tradition and broke the limit that Super Saiyan 1 should only have a 50-fold increase in combat power. 0. How did you do it? Suyi was interested and asked curiously. I don't know, in short, because I couldn't break through Super Saiyan 2, and then I kept practicing in Super Saiyan 1 state, and slowly, I found that my combat power increased tenfold. Gabe scratched his head and replied embarrassedly. Hearing this, Suyi pondered, and continued to practice in the state of Super Saiyan 1. Could it be possible to increase the multiplier? Thinking about it, his eyes flashed. To be honest, he had never experienced such a thing, because after he transformed into Super Saiyan 1, it would not take long for him to transform into Super Saiyan 2. And the reason for Gabe is that he has been unable to break through Super Saiyan 2, so the reason why he deepened his realm in Super Saiyan 1 can he transform. After thinking about it, Suyi felt that something was not quite right. After all, before they were able to transform into Super Saiyan 2, whether it was Sun Wukong or Vegeta, there was no reason for these two to practice less than Gabe, and neither of them was able to increase their combat power tenfold. Therefore, the general reason Suyi still thinks should be Gabe's own physique. Okay, I see. Suyi nodded and stretched out his hand. He has the power to stimulate people's potential like the Great Elder and the Old Realm King God, so he intends to stimulate the potential of this kid Gabe. If he can transform into a Super Saiyan 2, and if there is a Super Saiyan 2, the increase in combat power should be 100 times more than 10 times, then this kid's physique is really abnormal enough. 152. Hidden Easter Egg Quest. Saiyan Mentor. Although Gabe didn't know what Suyi wanted to do when he reached out his hand, he still followed him and took a small step, getting closer to Suyi. Do you have any orders, sir? Gabe asked respectfully. I brought out a small portion of your potential, and I wanted to see if your Super Saiyan 2 would be 10 times more powerful than our Super Saiyan 2. Suyi smiled. Hearing this, Gabe's eyes lit up with a look of surprise on his face. Suyi saw Gabe, who had closed his eyes, and slowly put his hand on his head, and a 7-colored light flashed on his palm. Come over. Gabby. Califa of Universe 6 saw Gabe in front of Suyi, as if she was being baptized, and her brows furrowed. Go and see. After thinking for a while, the female Saiyan warrior from Universe 6 gritted her teeth, and then pulled Car towards Suyi. In her eyes, the strength of this guy Suyi made the May 20 people very unhappy. However, this absolute strength also had to convince her. Now this guy Gabe feels like he's getting something good, and she's thinking about it right away. If What opportunities did you get? You know, she has also been stuck in the state of Super Saiyan 1 for a very long time. If she can enter the state of Super Saiyan 2, her strength will definitely be improved. So, thinking of this, Caulifla's heart suddenly became hot. Soon, Caulifla, who was pulling Kair, came to stand near Suyi and Gabe, and the two women's eyes were on Suyi. In this scene, in the auditorium outside the venue, Bulma saw two women surrounded her husband, and immediately got up from the auditorium, rolling up her sleeves and looking unhappy. Who are these two women? Look at this like this. What is my husband doing? While speaking, Bulma wanted to jump over the fence, but she wanted to fly towards the ring. Sister Bulma. Seeing her action, Lazuli showed a wry smile on her face. She hurriedly stood up and hugged her, whispering, "Sister, don't embarrass your husband. After all, there are so many gods around here. If you let them know about us women with such a powerful husband are so jealous, isn't it a shame?" Hearing Laslie's words, Bulma, who was holding the fence, frowned, thought for a moment, let go, turned around and glanced around, and found several angels of the universe and other realm kings. All the gods set their sights on her. Immediately, Bulma's pretty face blushed, coughed twice in embarrassment, and then returned to the auditorium and sat down. Seeing that Bulma was irritable and full of embarrassment, Kalinia Mucha and Tianjin Fan, who did not participate in the competition, immediately laughed. "What are you laughing at? Is there anything funny?" Bulma heard the laughter. Her pretty face blushed again, then snorted and glared at them, sitting in the audience seat and then looking at the field. After a while, it should be due to personality, let her wave her hand and shouted, "Husband, come on. Send me all these women who want to soak in you." "Ooh." Bulma spoke, and then called out excitedly twice. Seeing her true temperament, Weiss shook his head and chuckled, and then looked at the ring in the arena. At this moment, Suyi has already stimulated a small part of Gabe's potential, and the latter's momentum is skyrocketing wildly. Ah! The potential was fully stimulated, and as Gabe roared, the bland golden fireworks around him began to swell, followed by lightning bolts appearing around his golden fireworks, crackling loudly. Damn it, it's too good. On the other side, Caulifla saw Gabe's change, with a shocked expression on her face. She was originally from the 6th universe's little sister, and she uttered a foul language. Hearing Caulifla's voice, Suyi glanced sideways and found the little sister's shocked expression. When he saw his gaze coming over, he also met his gaze. The shocking look on Caulifla's face instantly turned into a flattering smile. She hurriedly trotted to Suyi, rubbed her hands and stared at him, kicked a small stone beside her feet, and said, "Dear Mr. Saiyan from Universe 7, may I ask, how did you get this guy Gabe to transform into Super Saiyan 2? In the face of the temptation to increase her strength, Caulifla has no temper at all. Just like a dying person, in the face of survival, there is absolutely no dignity and temper." Suyi looked at this female Saiyan warrior in the 6th universe. She had a flattering smile on her face, but her eyes were very sincere. Generally speaking, it was just a yearning for strength, and her attitude did not show any disgust in life. Suyi rubbed his chin with his hand and thought. Caulifla was not in a hurry, and still looked at him expectantly without urging. She knows that she is now the one who asks for others. If she remains arrogant, isn't she completely killing herself? Not to mention, Suyi's strength alone, and the fact that the last power conference brought them back to life, made her unable to be arrogant in front of Suyi. Boom! Suyi had already thought about it, opened his mouth, and was just about to speak. At this time, Gabe next to him suddenly burst out with another powerful breath. Damn it, this guy's strength has skyrocketed again. Caulifla, who was waiting for Suyi to speak, felt Gabe's momentum, her eyes suddenly widened, and she exclaimed. Huh! Compared to Caulifla's shock, this aura is indeed powerful, but it's the same for him. He was surprised that Gabe turned into a Super Saiyan. People 2 is indeed more than 100 times the combat power increase. However, it is also not a 110-fold increase. Instead, 120 times the combat power increase. Great power, is this the power of Super Saiyan 2? The completely transformed Gabe clenched his fists tightly with a shocked expression on his face. Then he hurriedly came to Suyi and bowed deeply. If it weren't for your help, Mister, it is impossible to transform into Super Saiyan 2. Your strength is very strong. Gabe may not be able to help you do anything big, but if you have any orders, Gabe will go through fire and water, and he will do whatever he wants. Quote. Hearing this, Suyi shook his head and chuckled, waved his hand, just about to say nothing, but soon thought that he was going to take Bulma and the others to see other universes. So, at that time, you can actually let Gabe take them to play in the fun places in the 6th universe. Thinking of this, Suyi nodded and decided that the first stop on the trip would be Universe 6. Sir. Caulifla, who was on the side, saw that Gabe had obtained a huge benefit, and hurriedly shouted. Come here. Suyi hooked her hand at her, motioning her to come to him. Caulifla didn't think much, and jumped in front of Suyi as instructed. Suyi stretched out her hand and put it on Caulifla's head, and then inspired a small part of her potential. It's not that Suyi hides his clumsiness and doesn't give them full potential, but that he thinks it's better to go step by step. Besides, if their potential is stimulated all at once, then I am afraid that it is really hurting the 2.2s. Because the potential of the Saiyan race who can transform into a Super Saiyan is infinite, and to stimulate all potential in advance is to terminate his potential at his weakest moment in advance. This is also the reason why in the original Dragon Ball anime, Son Gohan was first inspired by the Great Elder of Namek, and then once again by the old Kaiwang god during the Majin Buu period. Inspire once, benefit for years. This is not nonsense. Soon, Caulifla's potential was also stimulated to completion. Her Super Saiyan 2 also broke out, and this woman's combat power increased a lot, just like their Super Saiyan 2 in Universe 7, 100-fold increase. In the end, Suyi also activated a small amount of potential for Kair, the legendary Super Saiyan. Ding! Congratulations to the host for completing the hidden Easter egg quest, Saiyan Mentor. Just when Suyi closed his hand, a system sound suddenly sounded in his mind, which made him stunned. 153. The third stage of Wukong's free supreme inspiration. System, what does this mean? Suyi was stunned for a while, then asked. Host, this quest is a hidden Easter egg quest. You need to inadvertently satisfy a certain point of this quest before it can be triggered. The system opened up to explain. Hearing this, Suyi pondered for a while, and then suddenly became stunned. It seemed that he had mentored most of the Saiyans he was close to before. Columns such as Monkey King, Vegeta, Monkey King. Now, add Gabe, Caulifla, and Kaylee, the 3 Saiyans from the 6th universe. So, have you completed this hidden Easter egg quest? That's right. System recovery. Okay, then let me see what this hidden Easter egg quest can give me. Suyi smiled, and then his mind sank into the system task space. Soon, a golden exclamation mark entered his sight. Clicking on the quest with a golden exclamation mark, Suyi glanced at the quest's introduction, which was similar to what he thought. He pulled it down and took a look at the quest reward. Seeing the reward for completing this task, 3 big black question marks appeared on Suyi's forehead. This Nima, just a title. Saiyan Instructor, a title that can be obtained by those who have taught more than 6 Saiyans. The specific function is to help their 28-year-old students to further improve their potential. Suyi saw the introduction of this title, and another series of big black question marks appeared on his forehead. What the hell kind of reward is this? System, let's come out and talk. To be reasonable, there is no quest reward. I'm afraid I really don't have any small emotions. You made a quest reward, that's all. No wonder Suyi was upset. What exactly is the reward for this task? Even he would rather not have this reward, he should be more comfortable teaching. Host, you haven't read the follow-up introduction to the title of Saiyan Mentor. After a long silence, the sweet and beautiful voice of the system suddenly rang in Suyi's mind. Hearing this, Suyi was stunned for a moment, then pursed the corners of his mouth in embarrassment, and continued to sink in his thoughts before taking a look at the follow-up introduction to the title of Saiyan Mentor. Hold the grass, hold the grass, hold the grass. After 3 seconds, Suyi, who had read the follow-up introduction to the title of Saiyan Mentor, couldn't help but burst out 3 swear words in a row. Host, do you still think this title is useless? The sound of the system's ridicule came, making Suyi really blushed and hot. He coughed twice to stabilize his emotions. Suyi took another look at the follow-up introduction to the title of Saiyan Mentor. Saiyan Instructor. I have taught more than 6. The specific function is to be able to help dogs. While the students taught or practicing, the title will automatically convert some of the combat power obtained from the practice to the instructor. So horrible. It's so scary. This title. To be honest, being able to obtain some of the results of the practice of the students he taught means that he is not only practicing alone, but also that several people are helping him practice at the same time. He almost lost such a heaven-defying title, and now he really wants to give himself 2 ears. It's really lost. That's the real waste of money. Do I need to wear it? Suyi asked a question, and his heart was hot at this time. Buff that increases the speed of cultivation of Biming divine art, and a bug that increases the speed of time 100 times in the time house. The effect of his practice in the future will definitely not be as simple as 1 + 1 + 1 = 3. Need. The system replied. Suyi nodded, just about to wear this title. At this time, there was a sudden explosion and roar around him, pulling him back to reality. A figure was blown away beside him. Who was this kid if it wasn't Sun Wukong? Boom. Another energy bombardment came. Suyi looked up. This time the rules of the power conference were not as strict as before, and it was possible to fly. Therefore, Jiren in the sky is now bombarding the position where Sun Wukong fell to the ground below. Suyi watched coldly, not ready to help Sun Wukong. First, he believed that Sun Wukong had the strength to escape. Second, not being able to escape is also a test for him. So in any case, Suyi will not help. The smoke and dust were filled, and after a while, it dispersed, and a silver-white light emerged from the place where Sun Wukong had been before. Suyi stared at the past, and suddenly there was a faint and gratifying smile on the corner of his mouth. This guy really surprised him. That's right, Sun Wukong has broken through to the 3rd stage of Zizai Jigong. At this time, his whole person was in the silver-white light. Boo! A sound like the cork being pulled out sounded in the field, and the silver-white light and glass that wrapped Sun Wukong in it were shattered, revealing his figure. This guy Kakarot. On the other hand, Vegeta, who once again fought with the 11th universe Topo, suddenly changed his face and turned his head to look at Sun Wukong. After feeling the momentum in him, the originally very aggressive momentum was in vain at this moment. Fell down. Sun Wukong. In the sky, Jiren stared at Sun Wukong on the ground, gritted his teeth, and called out his name. Jillian. Sun Wukong looked up at the sky with a smile on the corner of his mouth. As he called out Jiren's name, he rose from the ground, rushed into the sky in an instant, and arrived in front of Jiren. Drink. Sun Wukong roared and punched out. In the original work, the strength of Sun Wukong in this state is similar to Jiren's, but don't forget, his strength is stronger than that of him in the original work. Don't underestimate the strength of these, enough to make Sun Wukong reach another level. Suyi on the ground glanced at Sun Wukong's combat power in this state, 12.5 Beijing. As for Jiren, it is 12.1 Kyoto. The strength of the two seems to be similar, but in fact, the strength of 0.4 Jing is enough for Sun Wukong to abuse Jiren a few times. Next, fully entering the time of Sun Wukong's counterattack, Jiren is not the opponent of Sun Wukong at all, and soon, Jiren is completely defeated. Sun Wukong thought about it for a while, but didn't directly throw him off the ring, because he needed this guy to recover, and then fight him again. A rare opponent, Sun Wukong is naturally reluctant to let Jiren leave the ring so soon. Brother Su Yi. Sun Wukong returned to his normal state and flew to Su Yi. Han Han smiled, and 447 shouted. Yes, your strength is now enough to fight against Beerus. Su Yi nodded very gratified, thinking that Sun Wukong was only 70% of Beerus' strength not long ago, but now he has surpassed him. The speed of this strength growth is really fast enough. Hearing Su Yi's compliment, Sun Wukong smiled embarrassedly, then scratched his head and turned his head to look at Vegeta. Seeing his breakthrough, Sun Wukong was already in a state of rage, madly hammering the original not the top of his opponent. Your breakthrough this time can be regarded as stimulating Vegeta. Su Yi also glanced at Vegeta, shook his head and smiled. Sun Wukong clenched his fist and said, I believe that Vegeta will also be able to break through to the third stage of Zizai Jigong. Su Yi smiled again. At present, Vegeta didn't even comprehend the second stage of the ultimate freedom, and was thinking about the third stage. At that time, I am afraid that Sun Wukong has completely controlled Zizai Jigong, and this guy can understand the second stage, right? Or, open a back door to this guy and pretend to teach it to him inadvertently. Su Yi thought to himself, not because he didn't want to teach, but because Vegeta was too arrogant. He was more afraid that he wouldn't accept this love, and he would be embarrassed at that time. After all, this is not the same as the first teaching. Monkey King and Vegeta are on the same starting line, and it is the first time that Vegeta is willing to teach. In this second stage, everyone has no external help. If Vegeta asks Su Yi to teach it to him, it will definitely leave a knot in his heart, and he will definitely think that he has fallen behind Sun Wukong in his entire life. 154. Su Yi vs. Great Priest. Super Duel. After thinking about it, Su Yi also dismissed the idea of teaching Vegeta the second stage of the ultimate freedom. There have been several universes who have been kicked out of the ring, but so far no universe has been eliminated. Su Yi took another look at the Great Priest in the sky. This guy also looked at him, and the faint smile on the corner of his mouth made his eyes flash, and it also evoked a slight arc. It seems that this guy Karen has a plan in mind. Su Yi didn't wait any longer. He took a strong shot and turned into a humanoid harvester again. Every time he walked, someone was knocked off the ring by him. After a while, the first universe to be eliminated appeared, the 12th universe. This universe is exactly the group of guys who maliciously reported Su Yi before, and the first team to attack him. The God of Destruction Jin also participated in this power conference again, but after this time, he really lost the priesthood of the God of Destruction. Immediately afterwards, the first universe, the second universe, the third universe. Several universes were all cleaned up by Su Yi alone. Soon, there were only a few universes left in the field. The 6th universe, the 7th universe, the 11th universe. Like the first power conference, this time is also the remaining 3 universes. However, the number of people is not the same. In the 11th universe, there is only Jiren alone. All the people in the 7th universe are there, and all the people in the 6th universe are likewise. In fact, if it wasn't for Sun Wukong who wanted to continue fighting with Jiren, Jiren would have been kicked out of the ring. Universe 7 continued to fight with the people from Universe 6, and Jiren also continued to fight Sun Wukong. As for Su Yi, who was watching a play on the side, this game felt as if it had nothing to do with him. At this time, the high priest in the sky outside the field saw that the people on the ring were almost there, and turned around and flew to the seat on the high platform where King Quan was. King Quan, I want to step down and compete with Mr. Su Yi. What do you think? The high priest's eyes flashed with fiery light, and he asked. Is the grand priest going to compete with Su Yi? When King Quan heard the great priest's words, his eyes widened, and then he glanced at Su Yi, who was really bored in the arena, pursed his lips, nodded and said, yes. But, you are not going to hurt him. Hearing King Quan's words, the grand priest smiled and said yes, and then slowly flew towards the ring. Seeing the great priest flying towards the ring, everyone in the universe who were eliminated was stunned for a moment. Why is the great priest flying towards the ring? Someone asked in confusion. Isn't it right? The great priest is itching to find someone to fight. A man jokingly said this sentence. Swish swish. As soon as these words came out, everyone's attention turned to him. Murloc, are you really trying to die? You're making fun of the great priest when you say this, do you know that? A frogman stood up and looked coldly at the Murloc who had just spoken. That's right, with the status and strength of a great priest, would you participate in this level of battle? Another person jumped out, pointing to the Murloc who spoke before. For a time, the fishman was pointed at by thousands of people, and he couldn't raise his head at all. He hid his head and squatted down, his body shivering. Humph. Those who accused the Murlocs of various universes snorted coldly, and turned their heads to look at the arena in the arena. At this moment, everyone's eyes almost fell. My God. The sound of gasping for air resounded in the auditoriums of each universe, and everyone, including the angels in every universe, were shocked. Because, in their opinion, it is impossible for the great priest to participate in a duel of this level, and he really launched an invitation to a battle on the stage. Father he. In the 7th universe auditorium, Weiss' face was full of shock, and he said incredulously, Why? Why did you invite Mr. Suyi to a duel? There was a strange brilliance in Vado's beautiful eyes. To be honest, she was also very shocked. In her eyes, the great priest with absolute strength is the real god. And now, an absolutely invincible god has actually issued an invitation to a duel against a human being. It's too suffocating to think about it. Vados shook her head in amazement. She had forgotten how many years ago she saw her father take action. At this time, in the arena. You're finally on stage. Suyi looked at the great priest in midair with a smile and said. Seeing this scene, the faces of the people around were shocked. The great priest actually took the stage and invited Suyi to fight. In particular, Shangpa and Beerus, who were fighting, immediately stopped fighting and fell to the ground. The two looked at each other in shock, not understanding why this big man appeared to invite Suyi to fight. Come on. The great priest was concise, glanced at the open space beside him, and flew over there. Suyi naturally understood, and also flew to the open space on the side. Seeing this, Jiren and Sun Wukong, who were in the fierce battle, and the rest of the people who were in the fierce battle all stopped, and then each stepped back and returned to their own small circle. The battle between Uncle Suyi and the great priest must be very fierce. This is an unprecedented super duel. Sun Wufan's eyes flickered with excitement. He was no longer Nobifan, and completely released the militant factor in his father's bloodline, Sun Wufan. At this moment, he couldn't be more excited. Jiren, let's fight again next time. Sun Wukong cupped his hands, then flew back and went to the battle area of Suyi and the great priest to find a front position to watch. Soon, everyone from the 7th universe and the 6th universe arrived, staring at the two motionless people in the field. Diaresis, my combat power is only 50 kyo. Karen, you have to be a little bit cautious. Suyi put his hands behind his back and smiled. Hearing Suyi's words, the grand priest frowned, wondering why he was so combative. However, strange to strange, the great priest nodded, indicating that he understood. The combat power of 50 Beijing, in the hands of a high priest, can be more than just the combat power of 50 Beijing. Of course, the grand priest did not remind him. He believed that Suyi understood this truth. Since he has the confidence to fight against him in 50 Beijing, he will not deliberately lower his strength to make Suyi unhappy. Drink. A silver-white light flashed in Suyi's eyes, his pupils, hair, fireworks rising all over his body, and his tail turned silver-white at the same time. This is the second form of his Super Saiyan God, the final stage. When the great priest saw Suyi's form, his expression remained the same, very indifferent. Did you get it? When he reached his level, he felt that these so-called transformations were nothing but external forces. The real power is the power from the outside to the inside. In his opinion, Suyi's state at this time is just a simple external force. Of course, this just seemed a little weak in his eyes. In fact, with Suyi's current combat power, among the 12 universes, it can be regarded as a name that can barely be ranked. Come on, let me see how strong you are now, who was able to beat me back then. The great priest did not have explosiveness, and faced Suyi in a normal manner. As soon as he said this, the audience was moved. Especially the two gods of destruction, Beerus and Champa, their hearts couldn't help beating wildly. According to ancient legends, there is a Saiyan who is invincible in the world. That one, could it be this one now? As soon as this idea came out, the two of them were shocked again, and they were shocked by this idea. The first reaction was to reject the idea of myself, but other than this, what other explanation can there be? 155. Shock. How could Suyi's strength be so powerful? Beerus felt a little better at this time, while Champa was sweating profusely, and he was extremely glad that he didn't take care of this Mr. Suyi reluctantly. Otherwise, I am afraid that now he really has to start a road of escape. Good, really good. As the god of destruction in the 6th universe, it was the first time that Champa felt that the feeling of being alive was so good and so refreshing. In the field, Suyi has already moved. In the blink of an eye, he instantly arrived in front of the great priest. Boom! A short-range shockwave bombarded the face of the great priest, such a close distance, and the speed is so fast, if you are an ordinary person, let alone a master of the god of destruction level, even a master of the level of Wes is not necessarily able to react. However, at the grand priest, he just tilted his head to dodge, and easily avoided the shock wave from such a close distance from Suyi. Instead, he raised his hand and pointed it on Suyi's hand. Boom! In an instant, an explosion sounded, and Suyi flew upside down. Puff! One strike. With just one blow, a terrifying figure as powerful as Suyi vomited blood and flew out. Hiss! Seeing this scene, everyone outside the arena and in the ring exchanged glances with the people around them, and then a shock rose from the bottom of their hearts. Is this the power of the great priest? Suyi's strength is so deeply rooted in people's hearts that he is like a human-shaped harvester. Wherever he goes, people are thrown off the ring, and there is no power to fight back. 593 But, even with such a powerful character, he couldn't withstand such a random blow from the great priest. Too powerful. On the other side, the corner of Sun Wukong's mouth evoked a wry smile, and now he knew the gap between himself and the top-level people. Too big. However, I will definitely work hard to cultivate and slowly catch up with Brother Suyi and even this great priest. The stronger Suyi and the others are, the more aggressively Sun Wukong expresses a fighting spirit from the depths of his heart. Here, Suyi, who flew upside down, stabilized his body and stopped in midair. How? My strength. The great priest smiled and asked very peacefully. If this gesture was replaced by someone else, Suyi would naturally feel unhappy for a while. But when it was reflected on the face of the great priest, he was naturally very convinced. The strong must have the attitude of the strong. Obviously, the great priest is not just an ordinary powerhouse, but a small group of people standing at the top of the pyramid in the 12 universes. Besides, Suyi still understands this guy, and his expression is not much. Yes, worthy of being my opponent. Suyi smiled, reached out and wiped a small trace of blood that overflowed from the corner of his mouth, and then the fighting spirit burst out, and the momentum also burst out at the same time. Undoubtedly, after reaching the level of Suyi CCEE, there are very few opponents who can play against each other. Now, after finally encountering a guy like a great priest who is very terrifying in terms of battle experience and strength, willing to be his sparring partner, he will naturally not give up such a good opportunity easily. In this battle, Suyi felt that he could break through his limits. Karen, with your current combat power of 50 Beijing, don't be merciful. Su Yi became excited. At this moment, his aura burst out in full force. Coupled with the terrifying healing ability brought by his immortality, he recovered in the blink of an eye, and was even a little stronger than before. However, this little bit is not enough, and it can't even be translated into making his combat power 50.1. The great priest raised his brows when he heard Su Yi's words, and suddenly became interested. This guy still makes him feel interesting. Okay, as you wish. The great priest's voice just fell, but he found that the figure of Su Yi on the opposite side had disappeared in midair. Shish. One after another figure suddenly flashed by his side. Just when the great priest felt that he had found Su Yi's trace, he was about to punch. As a result, suddenly a fist bombarded from the back of his head. With an amazing response, although he had already tilted his head subconsciously when he heard the fist style, he still couldn't dodge all of them, and he still took a solid punch on the shoulder. Boom! With this punch, the great priest was directly blasted out by Su Yi. Karen, be serious. Su Yi's indifferent voice rang in the ears of the great priest, making the latter look dazed for a while. Except for the time when Salama was trampled underfoot and rubbed against Su Yi, he had forgotten that he hadn't been hit on the body for many years. Now, once again feeling this feeling, I have to say that the great priest also suddenly came to fight. As you wish. The great priest completely entered the state, and his face showed excitement. Ha ha, come on. Su Yi is full of fighting spirit. In this battle, he will break through his limits. In the third form of Super Saiyan, why do you have to use Super Saiyan 6 as a pedal to enter? Bang bang bang. The two set off at the same time and fought in the sky. Not to mention that other people outside the arena could not see the live screen of the battle at all, even the closest Sun Wukong and others were dazzled, and they also couldn't see the live screen of the two. It's terrifying. Beerus, who was on the side, had a shocked expression on his face from beginning to end. He couldn't imagine that someone could have fought against a top-level expert like the great priest for so long. Although, he knew that the battle between the two was suppressed by the combat power of 50 Beijing. However, he dared to guarantee that any person with the same 50 capacity combat power would come here to fight with any of the two. That will definitely be exploded in minutes, there is absolutely no suspense at all. Outside the arena, in the 7th Universe Auditorium. At this time, the Angel Vados of the 6th Universe had come to the audience seat of the 7th Universe and sat down. Excuse me, who is this Mr. Su Yi? There was a strange brilliance in Vado's beautiful eyes. She had never heard of such a powerful man, which made her very curious. Why are you asking this? Bulma didn't take this to heart at first, but when she looked back and saw such a beautiful woman asking her husband's identity, her tone became a little bad. My husband is my husband, what kind of identity can it have? Puff. Hearing Bulma's very jealous words, Kellen couldn't help laughing out loud. However, when he felt several unkind glances swept over, he immediately shrank his neck. After sneering twice, he hurriedly covered his mouth, and then slipped to the turtle fairy and sat down properly. Vados narrowed her eyes. Her temperament was not as good as that of Weiss. Don't look at the way she usually shows respect to Papa, the god of destruction in the 6th universe, but there are many things that make him embarrassed by teasing Papa. The most important thing is that sometimes she will lose her temper, and at that time, even Champa would be afraid. Sister Bulma. At this time, lazily, who was on the side, stretched out her hand and pulled Bulma, and whispered, "This is an angel, whose strength is higher than that of the god of destruction." What about the angels? I don't care. What did you say? Bulma was still very cold and arrogant, and after regaining her senses, her eyes suddenly widened. Razuri smiled bitterly and repeated what she said just now. Bulma's body softened, and then she swallowed, with beads of sweat already appearing on her forehead. Even though she practiced when she was a child, she also practiced when she grew up, and her martial arts talent was not too weak. However, in the follow-up, She did not always regard martial arts as her right path, but devoted herself to scientific research just like her original novel. Therefore, her strength now only maintains the combat power at that time. At most, it is less than 10,000 points of combat power. This little bit of combat power, in front of Vados, the god of destruction, is completely without the ability to resist. Suddenly, even Bulma was a little panicked at this moment. 156. Breakthrough in battle. Su Yi. Don't worry, I won't shoot at a human woman who is helpless. Vados glanced at Bulma indifferently, not to mention that Bulma is too weak. Even if she is Su Yi's woman, Vados also did not dare to do anything bad to this woman. Therefore, although she was a little unhappy in her heart, she just kept it in her heart and did not fully express it. I'm sorry, my sister is outspoken and thinks you are trying to think about our husband. Razuri said. Vados smiled at her and said, please rest assured, I have absolutely no idea about your husband. Vados's heart jumped inexplicably, and always felt that he would pay some price for this sentence in the future. However, this idea only flashed in her mind, and soon she stopped caring. Boom! Just when Vados wanted to ask another question, a deafening roar of explosions suddenly came from the ring. Immediately, this attracted everyone's attention. At this time, on the arena, inside the area where Su Yi and the Great Priest were fighting. One after another was formed by the mushroom cloud generated by the explosion. The smoke and dust were filled with dust and scattered everywhere. It looked very terrifying. Ha ha ha. The loud laughter sounded in the mushroom cloud. It was Su Yi's laughter. Su Yi, your strength is really not covered. The voice of the Great Priest then sounded, with a tone of admiration. Hearing the sound, the nearby Sun Wukong and others reached their heads and looked at the field. The smoke slowly dispersed, revealing two figures. A few seconds later, the smoke and dust dissipated completely, and the figures of Su Yi and the Great Priest were completely revealed. Su Yi's body was covered in dust, except for some torn clothes, but at least there was no injury. As for the Great Priest, there were several traces of blood on his face, and the divine clothes on his body were also broken, and he looked very embarrassed. The Grand Priest has lost in this duel. Beerus, who was on the side, saw this scene, his eyes widened. It was thought that the High Priest made Su Yi vomit blood with the previous blow, and this battle would be a one-sided situation. But now it seems that it is far from simple. This guy Su Yi really has the strength to compete with the most powerful priests in the 12 universes. But think about it carefully, if Su Yi really didn't have any standards, how could he make this Great Priest condescend to invite him to fight? I think your strength is more than 50 Beijing, I think I need to improve some strength. The Great Priest snapped his fingers, and saw a turquoise light shrouded him for about 2 seconds, and when the light dissipated, he saw that he had recovered from both his magical clothes and his injuries. You said that you didn't improve your strength just now. Su Yi glared at this guy. The destructive power caused by his blow just now is not something that a person with a combat power of 50 Beijing can follow. Even if this person with a combat power of 50 Beijing is a Great Priest, he can guarantee that this guy will never be accepted. Cough cough. Hearing Su Yi's words, the Great Priest coughed twice, his eyes wandered, and he saw Sun Wukong and the others who had been watching their battle, frowned, raised his hand and waved gently in the air, a method to isolate the sound. Array was released by him. Seeing this sound isolating magic circle, Su Yi's mouth twitched into a smile. If he guessed correctly, this sound isolating magic circle was a little thing he threw to this guy back then. Seeing the chuckle at the corner of Su Yi's mouth, the Great Priest also smiled, and then his aura suddenly exploded. 51 Beijing combat power. 52 Beijing combat power. 53 Beijing combat power. ... Soon, when the combat power of Beijing rose all the way to 60, the combat power of the Great Priest stopped. Are you the devil? Seeing that this guy's combat power suddenly increased by as much as 10 Jing, Su Yi's eyes widened. You must know that the collision between the two just now did increase his combat effectiveness a little, but it was only 50.5 Beijing's combat effectiveness. Good guy, the Great Priest has directly improved his combat power by 9.5 capitals, this is simply bullying. No, I am an angel. The Great Priest smiled slightly and denied that he was a devil. Hearing this, Suyi, who was still complaining about the Great Priest in his heart, couldn't help but burst out laughing. After laughing, Suyi moved his muscles and bones in midair, and then once again transformed into the second form of the Super Saiyan God. This is his most powerful form at present. It is a powerful form formed by the fusion of Super Saiyan 5, the realm of God, and the fusion of perfect freedom and extreme will. According to his previous thoughts, the next Super Saiyan third form is a fusion of Super Saiyan 6 plus the realm of God and the perfect and free extreme will. However, just now, he put this thought aside. He remembered what he said in ancient times, Karen, the Great Priest, people are strong from the outside, and the real God is the unity of spirit and flesh, regardless of each other. Katakana middle dot flowers katakana middle dot. To be honest, he still found it strange to understand before. Now, who has practiced meditation, he feels that this sentence is still very easy to understand. Ordinary human beings practice the external power. The real God, on the other hand, cultivates together with the outside and inside. To put it into easier to understand terms, it is the practice of the body and the soul at the same time. So, Suyi is thinking, is the real third form of Super Saiyan that he ideally combines with the power of the soul. Thinking of this ending, because the Great Priest attacked. A high priest with a combat power of 60 Beijing is not only stronger than the one with a combat power of 50 Beijing. It is as simple as that. From this attack, Suyi has already felt it. This powerful force, at least. The attack released by a person with a combat power of 80 Beijing. This old boy really doesn't let water. Seeing the fighting intent on the face of the Great Priest, Suyi complained in his heart. However, the complaints returned to the complaints, but he gathered his mind and seriously fought against the Great Priest again. For Suyi, this battle was really a little weak, because there was no way to fight back. If it wasn't for the fact that his undead body was too powerful, basically an injury occurred in seconds, and he would heal an injury in seconds. But the good thing is that whenever his damage heals well, his strength is a little bit stronger. Although it is only a little bit, but can feel that his strength is slowly increasing, then Suyi feels that it is all worthwhile. 5 minutes later, Suyi was still being beaten by the Great Priest. At this time, he no longer knew how many punches his body had been beaten by the Great Priest. If every punch hit a master of the same level, he felt that it was basically a punch to kill a child. The Great Priest went from strange at first, to surprise, to shock, and finally to numbness. He found that his 60 Beijing's combat power compared to 80 Beijing's combat power seemed like it didn't cause harm to this guy, but instead it helped him to practice. In just a few minutes, Suyi's combat power has soared from 50.5 Beijing to 55.5 Beijing. To increase the combat power of a Beijing every minute, is this not a pervert? Don't fight, don't fight, don't fight. The Grand Priest threw the last punch, and found that Suyi's battle had risen a little again, and he came to 56 Beijing, which completely broke his mentality. He flew back several dozen meters, waved his hand and shook his head. If we fight again, then I'm going to use more than 100 Beijing's strength. 157. The initial stage of Super Saiyan's third form. Hearing the Great Priest's words, Suyi secretly cursed, "Old guy," in his heart. Indeed, if this old guy just fought Suyi with a strength below 100 Beijing, he would definitely not have to fight. It can't cause substantial damage to Suyi at all, but what the Great Priest doesn't know is how perverted Suyi's undead body is. As long as there is no attack on his soul, then Suyi is in a state where it is absolutely impossible to be beaten to death. The strength of 100 Beijing, I hope you can completely explode the strength of this stage. Suyi smiled slightly, but did not object to the words of the great priest. For him, the most that a great priest with 100 Beijing combat power brings him is more physical pain. On the contrary, the more pain, the faster Suyi's combat power will grow, so he doesn't think this is a bad thing. Seeing that Suyi agreed so decisively, the great priest was stunned. Are you sure? My strength is 100 Beijing, are you sure that 143 can withstand my attack? The grand priest was a little uncertain, because he had a good relationship with Suyi, so he didn't want to kill him accidentally. And if that's the case, he won't be able to explain it to King Quan next. Although in this universe, King Quan was able to revive Suyi, but he really killed Suyi, and there was always a bit of a knot between the two of them. Karen, don't worry, you can use all your strengths to explode. Of course, all these strengths are limited to your 100 capacity combat power. Suyi laughed and didn't care at all. In fact, Suyi with a strength of more than 100 Beijing can also withstand it. The real reason is naturally that it will be very painful. With more and more powerful attacks on his body, there is no reason not to hurt more and more. Okay, then be careful. The great priest let out a loud shout, and at this moment, his aura exploded, and his combat power increased to 100 Beijing. Come on. There was a smile on the corner of Suyi's mouth. While he was being beaten, he was also passively practicing. He could even try to fight against a great priest who was so much more powerful than him. It was the best of both worlds. 56 Beijing combat power vs 100 Beijing combat power. 44 The disparity in Beijing's combat power is enough to make too many people in the world despair. However, Suyi did not despair, on the contrary, he was very excited. Yes, he was very excited. Drink. Suyi also let out a loud shout. At this time, the injury on his body has already recovered, and the state of the whole person has also improved to a higher level. The momentum exploded, and silver-white fireworks rose around him. If you take a closer look, it is not difficult to see that his transformation at this time has changed slightly from before. That is the silver-white fireworks around him, revealing a little golden light from time to time. This is not the golden light of Super Saiyan 1 or Super Saiyan 2 or Super Saiyan 3, but now, it is the big golden light. However, this big golden light is only a few, flickering. Suyi didn't see it, and the others didn't notice either. 57 Beijing. Feeling his own strength, Suyi raised his brows. After such a little time has passed, he has once again increased the strength of 1 Jing. What's the matter? Did I break through again? Suyi felt a little strange because he didn't notice anything different about his body. However, after thinking about it for a second or two, he didn't think about anything, so he didn't bother to think about it anymore. Turtle School Qigong Wave. No need to store Qi, Suyi hit a turtle Qigong wave at the great priest. Boom. The explosion roared. Cough cough. The coughing sound came from the black smoke produced by the explosion, and it came from the mouth of the great priest. Soon, the black smoke dissipated, revealing the figure of the great priest. You guys' normal attack with a trace of soul attack really made me smashed. On the surface, the great priest did not seem to be injured, but his mental state was indeed worse than before. Hearing the words of the great priest, Suyi was slightly startled, but did not respond immediately. What did he mean by a trace of soul attack? After a while, he was suddenly surprised. Karen, you said that I brought a small trace of soul attack in the attack just now. This news made him a little shocked. If he really had a small trace of soul attack on the normal attack that he attached, then the initial stage of the third form of the Super Saiyan he should be able to test can be realized. Yes, there is indeed a small trace of soul attack. Although it does not cause any substantial damage to me, I think if you meet other people, you should be able to easily numb the other party's nerves. A smile appeared on the face of the great priest. Suyi's strength was beyond his imagination. Karen, if that's the case, just a moment. He believed what the great priest said, so Suyi was going to completely try to see if he could release the third form of the Super Saiyan God he was thinking of. Huh. The great priest looked at Suyi with some doubts, not knowing what he wanted to do. However, he didn't make another move. He put his hands behind his back, stared curiously at his hands and clenched his fists, as if he was condensing some momentum. The great priest didn't feel anything at first, but then Suyi's rising momentum made his eyes condense. This momentum is different from the previous violent. Everything seems very calm and steady. If the previous momentum was compared to a young man, then Suyi's current momentum can be compared to the calmness of a young man. Although this calm aura is still not very stable, it is more important than the previous momentum. Bang bang bang. The Grand Priest smiled and clapped, admiring. You can't say how powerful you are, but the potential is really endless. From the previous 50 Beijing to now, it has almost reached the combat power of 58 Beijing. This rapid growth, how can the Great Priest not be shocked? At this time, the big golden light in the silver-white fireworks around Suyi's body was no longer looming as before. At this time, it has been completely revealed. Seeing this scene, Sun Wukong and others on the side showed shocked expressions on their faces. Brother Suyi, is this breaking through the realm again? Sun Wukong exclaimed. This force suppressed his blood even more. The distance between the two is not too far. Just feeling this momentum now, he can't help but want to kneel on the ground. This is not to say how terrifying Suyi's strength is, but this kind of suppression from his bloodline makes him want to bow down. Not only 3.9 Sun Wukong has this feeling, but Vegeta Sun Wuhan and several Saiyans in the 6th universe also have this feeling. At this time, Suyi, who was in the process of advancing, showed a smile on his face. He understood that his thoughts were not wrong, and his direction was not wrong. Super Saiyan 5 in the second form of Super Saiyan, the realm of God, perfect and free extreme mind power plus the spiritual power of meditation. At this moment, he has initially stepped into the third form of Super Saiyan God. Not much has changed, but my current normal attacks should be able to attach attacks to the enemy's soul. Suyi felt that his actual combat power had not soared, but he understood that his combat power was by no means as simple as it appeared on the surface. He guessed for a while, with his 58 jins of combat power, he should casually explode a 100 jins of fighting power. That's no problem. Don't ask him why he is so inflated, because this is the confidence that strength brings him. 158. A battle without suspense, about the next battle. Karen, accept my whipping. Suyi set his eyes on the high priest, then laughed. The whole person suddenly disappeared from the place, and when he appeared again in the next second, he had already reached the face of the high priest, and punched it out. Boom. This speed was so fast that even the great priest could not react, and a fist had already landed on his face, blasting him directly. Seeing this scene, not only Sun Wukong and the others outside the field were moved, and felt a little incredible. Although Suyi had blasted the great priest once before, but this time, in their opinion, the great priest who improved his combat power was bombarded by Suyi again, so it was inevitable that they were a little shocked. Why did your speed suddenly increase? The great priest was very shocked by Suyi's speed. He was able to react to his attack last time, but now he was blown away before he could react. Guess. Suyi smiled and punched again. However, the great priest who has already kept his heart, naturally, it is impossible for Suyi to hit the next punch. However, 22 his heart was useless. Because, don't forget that Suyi's normal attack has the effect of a soul attack. And this time the soul attack, that is the paralysis effect. With the strength of the great priest, it is naturally impossible to be paralyzed for too long, but a delay of 1 or 2 seconds is still reluctant to do. A delay of 1 second is enough for Suyi to easily defeat the great priest, let alone 2 seconds. Therefore, Suyi came with a flaming punch and bombarded again. Boom. This punch landed firmly on the face of the great priest and blasted him out again. Da 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 da. Suyi blasted the great priest, but did not relax, rushed up again, and hit the great priest with a punch. This made everyone who saw this scene have expressions that they didn't know how to describe, especially the masters at the level of the Angel of Destruction. All of them were really dumbfounded, which shocked them too much. In the field, Suyi started again. Stop it! Stop it! Stop it! Being hit so hard by Suyi, the great priest couldn't hold his face anymore, and this guy didn't hit him too much anywhere. Most of them hit him in the face, which made him really uncomfortable. His great priest is shameless, shameless. Hearing the words of the great priest, Suyi laughed, but he did stop. A turquoise light flashed on the great priest, and soon he saw that his bruised nose was back to normal. Feeling the gazes around him, he coughed twice and said, "This time, it's me who lost." "I know." Suyi nodded. "How can I lose if I lower my strength?" The great priest snorted coldly. "Actually, I'll tell you a secret. I've actually lowered my own strength." Suyi glanced around and whispered. Hearing Suyi's words, several big black question marks appeared on the forehead of the great priest. Ha ha ha. Suyi laughed loudly. After all, he who controls the power of the law of the universe doesn't mean that he has lowered his strength. What is it? After the main event was over, Sun Wukong and others continued to fight each other. After a while, Jiren lost, and everyone in the 6th universe also lost, and the 7th universe won a big victory. Back in the auditorium of Universe 7, Suyi's wives greeted him, beating his back, pinching his shoulders and even rubbing his arms. As for the baby girl, she was fanning her father with a small fan on the side, and the sweet smile on her face was really heartwarming. Cough cough. After sitting down, the high priest's cough sounded in the sky, and then his voice rang out. The second power conference was successfully held, and everyone has worked hard to participate. A speech ended in about 2 minutes. With the departure of the Grand Priest and King Quan, this power meeting was completely over. The follow-up reward Suyi was not going to pay attention to. He was just about to go to the auditorium of Universe 6 and asked Gabe to be his tour guide, but a voice came into his ears. "Hello, Mr. Suyi." A fragrant wind came into Suyi's breath, causing him to turn his head to see that the person who came was the angel Vados of the 6th universe. Seeing her, Suyi's eyes lit up even more. To be honest, if he wanted to travel to the 6th universe, Gabe might not really be a good tour guide. After all, others also have to practice, and they are not necessarily familiar with the planets they travel to in the 6th universe. When Vados appeared, Suyi naturally thought carefully. "Hello, Vados." Suyi smiled at her, very kind. "Can Mr. Suyi have a chat here?" Vados glanced at the Bulma girls around Suyi and smiled. Suyi thought for a while, then shook his head and said, "If you have anything, just say it here." Humph. Hearing Suyi's words, Bulma raised her head and snorted. Vados coughed twice and said, "My father told me that he would like to invite you to meet him someday. When do you think you have time to go?" Hearing this, Suyi was stunned. Why didn't that guy from the Great Priest notify him directly? However, Vados is the daughter of a Great Priest, so naturally he would not doubt it too much. After thinking about it, he estimated the time, and said, "It should take a year or 2, this power conference is completely over, I think travel to different universes with my wife and the others." As soon as Suyi said these words, a look of surprise flashed in Vado's eyes. Then she said, "I don't know which universe Mr. Suyi is going to go to first." "The 6th universe." Suyi said directly. This was the first decision he made. After all, the 6th universe and the 7th universe are brother universes, and there are many points that may be very similar. Like this. There was a strange brilliance in Vado's eyes. He nodded and lengthened his voice, and said with a smile, "Why don't I do this? How about I be a tour guide for you?" "In that case, thank you very much." Suyi had originally planned how to get Vados to help him as a tour guide, but the woman suggested it herself, and he naturally couldn't ask for it. As for Suyi's decision, Bulma and the others naturally would not veto it. 133 followed behind him and stepped directly into an aperture with Vados, and the group left directly. In the circle of light, Suyi asked curiously, shouldn't the angels worship the god of destruction? If you leave, are you sure there won't be any accidents? Vados smiled and explained, Shangpa's priesthood is about to take office. During this period, I am free, so there is no problem. Suyi was stunned, and then stopped talking to Vados, chatting with Bulma and the others. After about 10 minutes or so, Suyi had not reached the 6th universe, which made Suyi a little impatient, got up and patted Vados on the shoulder. Unexpectedly, he only patted her shoulder very lightly, but the angel's body softened for no reason. Then, under Suyi's shocked eyes, the woman's skin turned red. What's the matter? Suyi was stunned, not sure what the situation was. Vados bit his lip and looked back at Suyi with a blurred look. As a woman of the angel family, it is impossible for a man to touch him. Because angels are a race that represents purity, once a female angel is touched by a man, her body will be paralyzed, and even more. She will fall in love with the person who touches her for no reason. And now, it is clear that Vados, who is looking at Suyi's increasingly blurred eyes, has been poisoned by him. 159. Vados who has been poisoned. Second update, 6. Suyi, who saw Vados' gesture, expression and eyes, was completely stunned. She didn't know what happened to her all of a sudden. Vados, are you all right? Suyi squatted down. If he hadn't used the power of the universal law to maintain the space jump, otherwise they would definitely be thrown into the space turbulence. Suyi crouched down and reached out to help the woman up. But his touch again made Vados tremble, biting his lip, and looking at Suyi with delicacy. Seeing this, Suyi showed a strange expression on his face. Although he didn't know what happened to Vados, the way she looked now inevitably reminded him of how Bulma and the girls were deeply in love on the bed. Cough cough. Vados, you. Suyi coughed twice, and hurriedly removed the hand on Vados' shoulder. Husband, what's the matter? At this time, Bulma, who was chatting with Leslie and Akatsuki, suddenly turned her head and asked Suyi and Vados squatting on the ground, wondering what they were doing. While speaking, Bulma got up and walked slowly towards them. Hearing Bulma's footsteps, Suyi secretly said something bad. To be honest, he really can't explain anything in this situation. Thinking of this, Suyi hurriedly snapped his fingers and directly used the power of the universal law to suspend the nearby local time. At this moment, Aperture continued to move forward to the 6th universe, but the difference was that Bulma, Razuri, Mato Akatsuki, and the little girl were all stopped in time. Vados, what's your situation? Suyi frowned and looked at the angel in front of her. With a face like a peach blossom, she was now more beautiful and more delicate than ever. To be fair, if any man sees her like this, he can't stand it. As a man who has tasted meat, Suyi naturally swallowed several mouthfuls down his throat. Vados is now a little delirious. In this state, she must need a man's redemption to recover her. Seeing Vados like this, Suyi became more speechless, and couldn't help asking, System, what's going on? How can I make this woman recover? It took a few seconds for Suyi to hear the system's reply. After listening to the system's reply, Suyi frowned and looked back at Bulma's daughter who had been locked in time by him. This is to make him do what he loves to do with the woman Vados in front of his wives and daughters. System, is there any other way to get rid of this woman's current state? Suyi looked at Vados, who was completely unconscious and groped towards him, and only felt a bit of fuck in his heart. To be honest, if Bulma and the others weren't here, with Suyi's personality, Vados might not be pushed. But, in this situation, even though Bulma's time was frozen, he still had an evil feeling. There is an elixir in the system mall space that can remove Vados' current state, but her complete love for you cannot be removed. The system was silent for a while before continuing to speak. Hearing this, Suyi didn't say anything more, and sank into the system mall space to search, and then exchanged a medicinal pill. As for Vado's love for him, he didn't think so much. There will be such a great scene next time. As long as Bulma and the others are not around, he will never be Lu Shahui. After all, in Su Yi's world, men have sex with food. This is called following one's own ideas, hesitating, flinching, and it will never be a big deal. Feed Vados this medicine lip to lip, and soon, the woman's red skin and restless heart receded. After a while, she fainted. Su Yi breathed a sigh of relief and was just about to get up, but out of the corner of his eye, he saw the woman's graceful figure, which was a little wet from the hot sweat, and swallowed unconsciously. From the perspective of a man, this Vado's figure is indeed very good. Moreover, coupled with the fact that this woman was wearing a divine costume, it was inevitable that Su Yi had a feeling of cosplay. It is natural to explain here that the cosplay that Su Yi was thinking of at this time was not the simple cosplay of the comic exhibition in the previous life. Cough cough. Su Yi's thoughts stopped abruptly, and he stopped thinking about other things. He should experience it, and it will be experienced by him after all. So, after he coughed twice, he stroked Vados's whole body with his right hand in the air, so that the magical costume on her body returned to its previous appearance, and then he snapped his fingers to release Bulma and the others. Da da da. The footsteps continued to sound, but Bulma didn't feel anything wrong. When she came to see Vados fell to the ground, she couldn't help but be surprised. Husband, what's wrong with her? I don't know. Su Yi shook his head, turned his head and said to Bulma, you carry capsules with you, right? Let's see if there are any medicines. Hearing Su Yi's words, Bulma was stunned for a while, and hurriedly checked whether she had brought a capsule, and soon she took out a capsule. Bulma, husband, Vados is a family of angels, not the same as the human body. You can't use medicines used by humans, right? Akatsuki Mato walked over and said speechlessly, in my opinion, I can only let her wake up naturally. Huh, she moved her eyelids just now. Following Akatsuki's exclamation, Vados slowly opened his eyes and let out a small moan. Vados opened his eyes, and the first thing he saw was Su Yi. Bang bang bang. This is the heartbeat. Su Yi, who was the closest, naturally heard the woman's heartbeat, and when he met her tender gaze, he couldn't help but feel a big mountain of yali. Diaresis, just wake up. Su Yechiang suppressed the throbbing in his heart. The woman's eyes seemed poisonous, which made him unconsciously have that fire rising in his heart. He was really afraid to look at each other for a while, and he couldn't hold back the rectification of this angel on the spot in front of his several women and daughters. Of course, this kind of thinking is only after thinking about it, does he feel that his concentration is very strong. However, when he can go on and when he can't go on, he is very clear. Mr. Su Yi. Vados got up slowly and shouted softly. Su Yi turned around, looked at her with a smile, and waited for her to say the following. I saw Vados reached out and touched his lips, then bowed and thanked, thank you sir. Seeing Vados's action, Su Yi raised her brows. So, although this woman was unconscious at that time, she still remembered that he gave her medicine by lip to lip. This is a bit embarrassing. Su Yi touched his nose, and when he turned around, there was an embarrassing smile on his lips. However, this embarrassing smile only existed for a fraction of a second, and it was replaced by a faint smile, and his voice came at the same time, it's okay. Bulma and Akatsuki Mato walked back, but they didn't notice anything wrong. Vados turned around, and all that appeared in his mind was the figure of Su Yi. Poison on this woman's body has been removed by Su Yi's medicinal pill. Poison in my heart is already terminally ill. Taking over the space jump again, Vados also suppressed the throbbing in his heart and concentrated. After a while, the speed slowed down, and soon an aperture appeared in everyone's sight. As long as you pass through that aperture, you will reach the 6th universe. Vados turned back and said with a sweet smile. She, who has already fallen for Su Yi's love poison, has regarded Bulma as her future sisters, so this attitude is naturally worse than before. Don't. 160. Luli, my dad is so handsome. The aperture that entered the 6th universe seemed to be very close, but it actually took about 7 or 8 minutes to enter this aperture. Wow, is this the 6th universe? As soon as he entered the aperture, Bulma glanced around and exclaimed. Hearing Bulma's exclamation, Akatsuki Mato and Razuri also got up and glanced around. Because they are in the universe, all the planets are floating in the universe. Some planets are red, some are blue, some are purple, brown. A variety of colors are centered together, and it does look a bit gorgeous. Tsuyi glanced at random, but didn't find anything interesting, so he quickly retracted his gaze and turned to the little girl beside him, and found that she had been staring at him, and couldn't help but feel a little strange. Luli, you have been. What are you staring at Dad for? Seeing that her father's eyes suddenly turned on her, the little girl suddenly panicked, and her pretty face blushed inexplicably. No, nothing. The little girl's subtle voice sounded, similar to the buzzing sound of a mosquito flapping its wings. If it wasn't for Tsuyi's amazing ear, he would definitely not be able to hear it. You girl. Tsuyi reached out and rubbed her head, then got up and came to Vado's side. 910. Su Luli, who was sitting on the side, pouted and looked at her father's back, puffed out her cheeks, and then came to Bulma's side and hugged her arm, which also looked like a starry sky in the 6th universe. Vados, is there any interesting planet in the 6th universe? Tsuyi came over and asked. His eyes were very aggressive, sweeping up from the bottom of Vado's graceful figure. Gudong. Seemingly feeling Tsuyi's fiery gaze, Vados swallowed involuntarily, glanced shyly at his sweetheart, and whispered, there are too many planets suitable for travel in the 6th universe. You can't imagine. After all, it is a universe with many planets, and there are simply not too many places suitable for life to live. Therefore, there are naturally many planets that can travel. Okay, pick one and take us on a tour. Tsuyi leaned forward slightly and blew a breath in Vados' ear. Hiss. Blowing out this breath, Vados's body trembled immediately. Not only did his cheeks instantly turn red, but his earlobes were as clear as emerald red. It was perfect. You, don't do this. Vados shyly said, this is not her pretentiousness, but the race of angels, which is indeed a buff that is as pure as paper in this kind of thing. Ha ha ha. Tsuyi laughed twice, then came to Bulma's side, holding her in her left hand and holding the little girl in her right hand. In fact, the right-hand side was originally where Akatsuki Mato was, but this little girl was abruptly occupied. In this regard, Tsuyi is naturally very helpless, because this allows him to experience the enjoyment only with his left hand. As for what to enjoy, people who understand it naturally understand. Soon, the space jump made by Vados has completely stopped, and they have arrived on a planet. Before entering this planet, Tsuyi casually glanced at it. The blue planet seemed to have the feeling of the Earth. However, Tsuyi knew that although the 7th universe and the 6th universe were brother universes, the two universes probably had the races they should have. However, it is absolutely impossible to be completely identical. Therefore, this blue planet in the 6th universe can only be regarded as a planet similar to the Earth in the 7th universe at most. The halo under the feet of several people disappeared, and they all used the air dance technique to float in midair and glanced below. Because the height is not high, and the little girl is wearing a princess dress, so he is worried that the little girl will disappear, so he naturally holds the little girl in his arms in the posture of a princess. And the little girl hooked her hands around Tsuyi's neck and snuggled happily in his arms. Bulma's girls saw this scene. They laughed for a while. Luli, you are so old and still sticking to your father so much. HMPH, Luli likes to be in Dad's arms. The little girl immediately replied, and once again made the girls laugh, and no one cared. After all, it is indeed a very normal thing for a daughter to stick to her father. This planet is called Blue Star. It is the central planet of the 6th universe. It is rich in materials, and the CCFC place you want to travel to is also very good. Vados opened his mouth to introduce Suyi. The staff in his hand lightly tapped in the air, and a ray of light burst out. Immediately afterwards, a mirror appeared in the air, and scenes appeared in the mirror. It's really beautiful, these environments. Suyi glanced at it, nodded and praised, looked down at the little girl, and asked, "It's up to you to decide which place Luli likes. Mom and Dad will listen to your opinion." Hearing Suyi's words, the little girl raised her head slightly and glanced at the mirror summoned by Vados, and she couldn't make a sound when the scenery passed by. In the end, when the scenery was drawn for 2 minutes, the little girl saw a beach-like place. Her eyes lit up, and she said, "That's it." Suyi looked over and saw that it was a sandy beach. Her brows furrowed immediately. This kind of place is very crowded, and they will definitely wear bikinis. He must say no. In his world, he can see the bikini worn by other people's wives and daughters, and others want to see the bikinis of his wife and daughter. No need to think about it. Su Yejun killed the guy he wanted to see in minutes. This kind of place is not the western capital of the earth in our 7th universe, and we naturally can't book a venue. Suyi politely refused, but heard Vados interrupt him with a smile. "Mr. Suyi, please rest assured, please leave these things to me to handle." In the 6th universe, the god of destruction is considered a higher status, but in fact the status of the angel family is even higher than that of the god of destruction. This blue star also has a god, who is in charge of the order of the world. And the gods, just like the gods in the 7th universe, who would not be afraid to see the powerful Beerus. Hearing Vado's words, Suyi pondered for a while, and when he saw the beautiful big eyes of the little girl blinking and blinking, his heart was naturally melted, and he would definitely not object. However, what surprised him was, why does this little girl like to go to the beach so much? Soon, a group of people came to the sky where the little girl wanted to play on the beach. "Everyone, please wait a moment." Vados smiled slightly, then she tapped the staff on her hand lightly in midair, like a stone thrown into the water. The ripples swayed, and then her figure disappeared from the sight of several people among. After a while, she reappeared where she was standing just now. "Clean up immediately, everyone will be dispersed," Vados said with a smile, and at this moment, the little girl suddenly frowned and shook her head. "Forget it, this place is too dirty." Originally, Su Luli still liked the environment of this beach very much, but just now she glanced down inadvertently and found that there was a lot of garbage in the sea, and it was even more unsanitary. She was naturally unwilling to be here. Hearing the little girl's words, Suyi reached out and tapped her on the forehead lightly, then laughed and scolded, "It's just you. Okay, since Luli doesn't like it, let's change it. But this time, let Bado Antsi gives you the choice, and you are not allowed to refute it." Quote. Hearing her father's words, this time, the little girl didn't refute. She just stared at Suyi's chin from her angle with her mouth puffed out and her cheeks puffed up, her beautiful big eyes shining like starlight. "My dad is so handsome." Suyi leaned forward slightly and blew a breath in Vados' ear. Hiss. Blowing out this breath, Vados's body trembled immediately. Not only did his cheeks instantly turn red, but his earlobes were as clear as emerald red. It was perfect. "You, don't do this," Vados shyly said. This is not her pretentiousness, but the race of angels, which is indeed a buff that is as pure as paper in this kind of thing. Ha ha ha. Suyi laughed twice, then came to Bulma's side, holding her in her left hand and holding the little girl in her right hand. In fact, the right-hand side was originally where Akatsuki Mato was, but this little girl was abruptly occupied. In this regard, Suyi is naturally very helpless, because this allows him to experience the enjoyment only with his left hand. As for what to enjoy, people who understand it naturally understand. Soon, the space jump made by Vados has completely stopped, and they have arrived on a planet. Before entering this planet, Suyi casually glanced at it. The blue planet seemed to have the feeling of the Earth. However, Suyi knew that although the 7th universe and the 6th universe were brother universes, the two universes probably had the races they should have. However, it is absolutely impossible to be completely identical. Therefore, this blue planet in the 6th universe can only be regarded as a planet similar to the Earth in the 7th universe at most. The halo under the feet of several people disappeared, and they all used the air dance technique to float in midair and glanced below. Because the height is not high, and the little girl is wearing a princess dress, so he is worried that the little girl will disappear, so he naturally holds the little girl in his arms in the posture of a princess. And the little girl hooked her hands around Suyi's neck and snuggled happily in his arms. Bulma's girls saw this scene. They laughed for a while. "Lu Li, you are so old and still sticking to your father so much." HMPH, Luli likes to be in Dad's arms. The little girl immediately replied, and once again made the girls laugh, and no one cared. After all, it is indeed a very normal thing for a daughter to stick to her father. This planet is called Blue Star. It is the central planet of the 6th universe. It is rich in materials, and the CCFC place you want to travel to is also very good. Vados opened his mouth to introduce Suyi. The staff in his hand lightly tapped in the air, and a ray of light burst out. Immediately afterwards, a mirror appeared in the air, and scenes appeared in the mirror. It's really beautiful, these environments. Suyi glanced at it, nodded and praised, looked down at the little girl, and asked, "It's up to you to decide which place Luli likes. Mom and Dad will listen to your opinion." Hearing Suyi's words, the little girl raised her head slightly and glanced at the mirror summoned by Vados, and she couldn't make a sound when the scenery passed by. In the end, when the scenery was drawn for 2 minutes, the little girl saw a beach-like place. Her eyes lit up, and she said, "That's it." Suyi looked over and saw that it was a sandy beach. Her brows furrowed immediately. This kind of place is very crowded, and they will definitely wear bikinis. He must say no. In his world, he can see the bikini worn by other people's wives and daughters, and others want to see the bikinis of his wife and daughter. No need to think about it. Su Yejun killed the guy he wanted to see in minutes. This kind of place is not the western capital of the Earth in our 7th universe, and we naturally can't book a venue. Suyi politely refused, but heard Vados interrupt him with a smile. "Mr. Suyi, please rest assured, please leave these things to me to handle." In the 6th universe, the god of destruction is considered a higher status, but in fact the status of the angel family is even higher than that of the god of destruction. This blue star also has a god, who is in charge of the order of the world. And the gods, just like the gods in the 7th universe, who would not be afraid to see the powerful Beerus. Hearing Vado's words, Suyi pondered for a while, and when he saw the beautiful big eyes of the little girl blinking and blinking, his heart was naturally melted, and he would definitely not object. However, what surprised him was, why does this little girl like to go to the beach so much? Soon, a group of people came to the sky where the little girl wanted to play on the beach. "Everyone, please wait a moment." Vados smiled slightly, then she tapped the staff on her hand lightly in midair, like a stone thrown into the water. The ripples swayed, and then her figure disappeared from the sight of several people among. After a while, she reappeared where she was standing just now. "Clean up immediately, everyone will be dispersed," Vados said with a smile, and at this moment, the little girl suddenly frowned and shook her head. "Forget it, this place is too dirty." Originally, Su Luli still liked the environment of this beach very much, but just now she glanced down inadvertently and found that there was a lot of garbage in the sea, and it was even more unsanitary. She was naturally unwilling to be here. Hearing the little girl's words, Suyi reached out and tapped her on the forehead lightly, then laughed and scolded, "It's just you. Okay, since Luli doesn't like it, let's change it. But this time, let Bado Antsi gives you the choice, and you are not allowed to refute it." Quote. Hearing her father's words, this time, the little girl didn't refute, she just stared at Suyi's chin from her angle with her mouth puffed out and her cheeks puffed up, her beautiful big eyes shining like starlight. "My dad is so handsome.